I'm going to call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, January 8th, 2020 to order, please. Can we have roll call?
We have 11 present, 1 absent.
Let the record show that Commissioner Callahan is excused this evening. Commissioner McDonough, would you lead us in the prayer and the pledge, please?
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which shall greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is the time for any public comment on any items on the consent agenda. Ed.
There it is. R. Bandrog, 2601 Grand Avenue, President of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation. Reference Section 1, Consent Agenda, Committee Reports. 4, Judiciary Committee Meeting Report. Communication 19466, requesting Council Commissioners to change the zoning ordinance requiring community residential facilities to obtain a conditional use permit within Butte-Silver City County and all residential zones. We are not asking you to prohibit group homes within residential zones. What we are asking you to do is comply with state of Montana law. We do not need to change the law. All we are asking you for is a variance and permitting procedure that allows for public input. This is so the most appropriate location within the zone or the most appropriate zone can be found to locate such a business. As explained by your city county attorney various times during the Judiciary Committee deliberations, determining the appropriate location is the purpose of zoning. There's a big difference between a few people getting together to share the rent and someone buying a residence or renting a residence, opening a boarding house business, and charging others for board, room, and or other services. This is about property owners or renters taking money for anything more than rent of a facility in a residential zone. This is about property owners or renters running a business in a residential zone. We require businesses to obtain a variance and or a conditional use permit to operate in a residential zone. We should not discriminate against other businesses who want to do business in the residential zone, requiring them to obtain a permit or a conditional use or a variance, and not requiring these group homes to do the same. For some of the comments, from some of the comments I have heard at the Judiciary Committee meeting, there is a need for some local procedure and control for situations which do not seem to be covered by state law and their system of permitting and control. I would also like to reference communication to be read and acted upon. Number 1, Communication 2020 0602, requesting Council of Commissioners hire a legal firm experienced in environmental law to review the consent decree prior to the Council signing on this document. I am sure that the Superfund Department can do a good job of informing the public and informing you from the viewpoint of the administration. But what is being proposed sounds like a wise idea to use the tools provided to you in the Butte-Silver City-County Charter under powers and duties of the Council of Commissioners, Clause 3.3C, to employ an attorney for purposes which the Council of Commissioners deem necessary. This would seem to be a time when it is necessary to be able to do the due diligence required in this situation. All the other stakeholders have done or have had done their legal reviews. Why should not you have a legal review done from the standpoint of the citizens? At least a person experienced in environmental law would help you to ask the correct questions to the Butte-Silver Bow Superfund Department. Thank you.
Is there any other further public comment on any items on the consent agenda?
Good evening, council members. My name is Deb Penner. I live at 1236 West Platinum, and I would also like to encourage the council to move the communication with regards to the special use permit for group homes in residential neighborhoods forward so that our local laws match those of our state and so that we can make sure that we are indeed using zoning in everyone's best interest in Butte-Silver Bow.
Any further public comment?
Good evening, esteemed council. My name is Glenn Southergill. I live at 1200 West Steele. Very briefly, I also rise to support this measure before you, communication number 19466. I stand in support of this because of the importance of deliberate planning and professionalism in supporting those in therapy and treatment. I believe that the county should have a strong voice to ensure that the planning being done is appropriate and suitable, and this seems like a wonderful way to uphold those standards and advance them. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Glenn. Anything further? Wayne.
Hi, I'm Wayne Harper, and I'm at 1250 West Woolman, up on the Upper West Side, and I'm here in support of moving forward with the ordinance. I just built a garage at 1250 West Woolman. I had to get permits to do that. By the way, passing this is a win-win for both sides. I'm on the board for the Southwest Montana Veterans Home, and I've learned more in the last 5 months about dealing with the state of Montana and what can and can't be done under their auspices that are not in their laws. They are not in the laws that apply to homes such as this. I believe we need them in Butte, and I believe they're proper when properly located, but it's a win-win. If we have an ordinance that allows them and has been looked at and the variances are made to put them where they belong, under 602 funding from the state of Montana, under Section 2.1 outpatient funding to get money from the state of Montana, it greatly helps the home and the people that are trying to help the individuals, and it would also help the communities know that this board and people are looking at this for the entire community, not just the west side, for everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Any further comments?
Hello, council members. I'm Jim Downey from the Platinum Street, and I'm in favor of getting this bill passed, this 19466. It's very important to keep the neighborhoods as they are. And I would greatly appreciate a vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any further comments?
Thank you for your time. I'm Sherry Salo. I live at 4145 East Lake, and I just wanted people to know that this is supported by the whole community, this passing of this ordinance. So we're in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. No.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tracy J. Swanson, 1302 West Platinum. I'm also in favor of passing this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tracy.
Hi, I'm Heidi Noggle. I live at 3403 Carter Street, and I'm also in favor of passing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Burke. I live at 1222 West Platinum. My wife and I have resided in that area for the last 30 years, and we would like to voice our support for 19466 proposed by Commissioner Mankins. I think this provision puts a lot of integrity back into the zoning regulations, and I think that it's something that would be very positive for all of us. So I hope that all of you will support that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello and thank you. I'm Sarah DeMoni, 1217 West Platinum. I too am here in support of communication number 19-466. As you overheard from a number of individuals, that there's a lot of support, and there's numerous reasons as to why. Mainly the strongest one, I feel, has to do with zoning and keeping zoning more in our local hands. There's been some discussion, I understand, and some of the comments made throughout the time of this, thinking perhaps maybe this needs to be done also at the state level. Until such a time as the state can get it together and we can talk to legislators, let's keep it here at local level. Let's have our own community be able to decide what is an appropriate area for a home such as what is being proposed, and changing our ordinance to have a conditional use where it's discussed amongst the group. I think that is far more important than some of the other reasons why not to do this or what so forth. So I personally and my family is very much in support of Commissioner Mankins.
Thank you, Sarah. Any further comments? Bob.
Commission, Chief Executive Palmer. I'm Bob Worley. I live at 3405 Wharton Street in Butte, Montana. I'm here to speak on Communication 2020-02. And Butte-Silver Bow has been in this Superfund thing for a number of years. And it seems to me the commissioners and the people of Butte have been kept in the dark in this until now. And I think it's really important that we get a legal firm in here, somebody that has experience in environmental law and so forth, so that they look at this. So this is our last chance. I mean, if we don't get it right this time, we don't get it. So I hope you guys will support this communication and get somebody in here to look at this thing that's going on. So, okay? Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move for the approval of the minutes of the December 18th.
Oh, I'm up here.
We got one more?
I'm sorry. I'm Lisa Howell. I live at 1308 West Aluminum, and I'm here in support of
Commissioner Mankin's movement on support of a variance that would require group home facilities to obtain the conditional use permit. For me, I just think a balance needs to be found between the rights and safeties of the residents in different neighborhoods and the opportunities and the rights of the individuals that are in these vulnerable populations. I think more transparency in going into these businesses before they come in would also support the people in those vulnerable populations. So more transparency could just allow Butte to use zoning in the best interest of Butte. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Jen DeLong, and I'm just here to support Eric Mankin's. I support moving forward in the variance for special use permits with zoning. And for me, as a mom of 3 kids, and my husband and I have been cleaning up properties in Butte, I want our city to support things that are for the long haul and just to better the whole city. So I'm definitely for therapy. We all know people that need it, but just those kind of homes being in the right place with great planning, with long-term vision, that will just make a better place for our city. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, now we'll go for the approval of the minutes of the December 18th, 2019 regular meeting. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'll make a motion that we approve the December 18th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of the December 18th, 2019 minutes. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Next, do we have one item not addressed on the agenda that we have to suspend the rules for? Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. In accordance with the provisions of Section 6 of Rule 6 of the Rules of Business of the Council of Commissioners of the City and County of Butte-Silver Bow, State of Montana, the Council hereby finds that an emergency condition exists which requires that the Council rules be suspended to allow Communication 2020-19 to be added to the agenda on January 8th. The reason for the suspension is as follows. Communication number 2020-19 is a communication from Maria Porchavina, Executive Director of Butte-Silver Bow Tourism Business Improvement District, requesting council authorize street closures on January 11th, 2020 on Park Street near Montana Street Arch between approximately 7:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. and on Main Street between Broadway and Granite Streets from approximately 4:45 to 5:45. This communication was not submitted prior to the deadline for submission of items for the January 8th, 2020 agenda, as Ms. Porchavina was not contacted about this project until after such deadline. However, in order to allow the project to proceed, Ms. Porchavina requests the council add communication 2020-19. So at this time, I make a motion to approve the suspension of the rules to consider placing council communication 2020-19 on the agenda on January 8th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the suspension of the rules to place communication 2020-19 on tonight's agenda. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries, and we'll do that communication a little later in the agenda. Next is the Chief Executive's report. Just want to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and I think 2020 is going to be a great year for Butte-Silver Bow. So I did meet this morning with the Health Board about establishing a health study committee for the Silver Bow County, and it would be under the Butte-Silver Bow Health Board, with Karen Sullivan being the chairperson, and they backed the plan 100%. So in probably the next regular meeting, I'll be coming forth with a communication to this council to approve the appointments of several people that will be from different factions of the community. It'll be MR, ARCO, the Health Board, there'll be Montana Tech, DEQ will have a representative on there, Department of Public Health and Human Services will have a representative on there. There'll be several others, but that will be coming forth at a later date. I think that it's time to look at all of these health studies and have a clearinghouse for all of them, and to be able to look at health issues outside of the priority soils in the Superfund area. So it might look at the stuff that Mr. Vanderhoff continues to ask about around the Greeley neighborhood, the air monitoring, or it won't be restricted to inside the Superfund activities, but I think it'll be great and for Butte, and it's not going to take away from the other groups that are already in existence, like CTEC. They're more of a technical committee, and they've been spread thin looking at the health studies, and I think if we get them back on track for doing the technical review of some of this stuff, and this separate group would look at all of the health issues in Silver Bow County, I think we'll be moving in the right direction. So that'll be more to come at a later date, probably the next meeting. That's all I have under my report. Really, you're still waiting on the release of the CD on Superfund, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. A, 1 through 4, committee reports, and B, 1 through 16. Are there any segregations or friendly amendments? Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate item number 10 as Communication 2020-12, please.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I would like to segregate number 16, 2020-18. Thank you.
Any further? Did you want to do it? Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate out of the Judiciary Committee Meeting Report, Communication 19-466.
Is that it? Okay. Move for the approval of the consent agenda. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would make a motion that we approve Section 1, the consent agenda, A, the committee reports 1 through 4, with the exclusion of Communication 19-466. Section B, Communications 1 through 16, with the exclusion of number 10, 2020-12, and number 16, 20-18.
Second.
Well, motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda, committee reports A, 1 through 4, exclusive of the Judiciary Committee report number 19-466, and B, Communications 1 through 16, exclusive of number 10 and number 16. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. We'll go to number 4A4, Judiciary Committee Report, Communication 19-466. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. This is Eric Mankins, Commissioner, District 9, requesting Council of Commissioners authorize the Chief Executive to discuss a change in zoning ordinance requiring community residential facilities as defined by state law to obtain a conditional use permit within Butte-Silver Bow County in all residential zoning districts, including R1, R2, R3, R4S, and RC. The recommendation from the Judiciary Committee was a motion made by Commissioner Mankins and seconded by Commissioner Sorich for County Attorney Joyce to prepare a resolution of intent to amend the zoning ordinance to require conditional use permit to be obtained to maintain a community residential facility in all residential zones. As you can see with the audience that we have here tonight, this is a pretty big topic for us to consider. One of the things that I think is warranted is that we've had discussions in Judiciary, but as you guys know, this is a 30-minute meeting, And sometimes we can't really get full discussion in during that time. As you guys can see, we have a lot of the public in front of us. Some of you have come up before us on the judiciary meeting. Some of you, most of you have not at that point. But it really doesn't allow for like true dialogue to happen in a formal type setting. And I think there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of concerns from both sides on this. And in order to really make sure that we're all on the same page, because this is asking for a resolution. We've heard the term ordinance be used tonight, and it's not an ordinance, it's a resolution, and really having that completely fleshed out to make sure that we're doing what we can immediately rather than creating an ordinance and then having to redraft and do all of that stuff. I think it'd be more appropriate to move this to committee of the whole, where we can actually have a full length discussion where we don't have time limits, if you will, and actually try to flesh out things. We can have our planning director communicate and answer questions, and we can make sure that everybody is on the same page. The public is more than welcome, obviously, to come and sit in on it, hear everything, not just the 10-minute conversations that go on at the Judiciary Committee meeting. So at this time, I would make a motion, if it's the pleasure of the council, to hold Communication 19-466 in the Committee of the Whole, so it goes on to that full meeting.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to hold Communication 19-466 in the Committee of the Whole. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. As we all know, this is a contentious issue, and as Mr. Mankins has said at the last couple of meetings, that one of my old sayings is this can has been kicked down the road quite a while. And I really don't have a problem with moving it to the Committee of the Whole, but I think it'd be a good idea if we discussed it a little bit tonight. And if people are ready to listen to what the public's saying to us, maybe it ain't a bad time to make a vote and see where we stand. I mean, we had the guy from the state, Carter Anderson, come in, and he gave us some information, and the county attorney's worked on it pretty hard, and Lori Casey's worked on it pretty hard. And, I'm not saying I'm ready to make a motion or a substitute motion at this time because it's Mr. Mankin's communication, but I kind of feel that the public's been here and we've talked about this, and if someone would make a motion, I would be willing to second the motion to go ahead and take a vote on this and see where we stand. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Anything further on the question? Okay. Will everyone please vote? Just so everyone understands the motion, it is to hold it in Committee of the Whole for further discussion. Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
We have 10 yea and 1 nay.
Motion carries. So it will be referred to the Committee of the Whole next week, and there will be a discussion before the full council. Next, we'll go to communication number 10. Communication 2020-12. Dave Palmer, Chief Executive, requesting Council of Commissioners to accept this letter as my formal request for the review and authorization. Authorize the Chief Executive to sign the location release from my Tupelo Entertainment, LLC, doing business as My Entertainment. Who segregated this? Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. So this release, this location release, has to do with two locations, the Anselmo Mine Yard and the Stewart Mine Yard, which are public mine yards and head frames, and they are dictated by some of our departments to keep them safe and without liability issues and other things that might come up. And so I was asked by our Historic Preservation Officer to allow her to speak on this, because this involves both our Superfund remediation manager and our Historic Preservation Officer. So Mary, do you want to come up? Thank you. Just to answer some questions. You're on.
Thank you. I'm Mary McCormick, Butte-Silver Historic Preservation Officer, 517 North Excelsior. Thank you, Chairman Shaw, for segregating this communication, and Chief Executive Palmer and other commissioners for listening to me. I just first want to say, I highly respect Dave Palmer as our Chief Executive and his recommendations, but I come at things from sometimes a little different perspective, and so I think there's some things I just think it's important for us to consider before we sign this agreement. This agreement is to allow travel TV to film a paranormal show at our mine yards, and that means they're ghost hunting in the mine yards. They're going to be doing some other locations in Butte. And I just have to say I'm not a fan of ghost hunting as a historic preservation person, because it has led to the destruction of so many historic buildings. One building that comes to mind is the caretaker's house at Basin Creek that has been severely damaged by vandals, and I have it on from more than one person that was done and started in about 2010 by an adult who took high school students down there to hold seances with a Ouija board and find ghosts, and they found a witch. And so the students started coming back on their own and beating up the walls and breaking out all the windows. But that's not unique to Butte. I've seen it all over the Pacific Northwest. I've traveled around a lot recording historic buildings. I've seen historic churches out in rural areas, with their windows broken out, headstones overturned, and it's, with stories that satanic cults are having seances and things like that. And what concerns me about our mine sites is they are very vulnerable resources. They may be in the middle of town, but they're highly vulnerable. They get broken into. They have in the past. We have people, have broken in the past to steal copper and other things that they can sell. But, high school kids breaking into drink and things like that. And it's, we get left with the mess. Eric Hassler and his reclamation crew are the ones that have to go do the cleanup after that. And I'd just like to remind you, I think it was last year when we had an individual go into the Anselmo mine yard. We don't know how he got in there. He got on the head frame. We don't know how he got on the head frame. And he fell from the head frame, and he died. And he was frozen in the ice under the head frame for 2 weeks before anybody found him. So these sites, where they may be in the city, they're kind of dark. They're a little isolated. There's not necessarily, people living right next door, and they get broken into. What I've seen in the past is, a show like this is going to put us on put us at national attention. It is going to give Butte national recognition as a place where you can come and hunt for ghosts. And that may be fine in controlled buildings, maybe hotels where there's people living there. Up at the World Museum of Mining, I know they're authorized to go underground on their underground tour. But there they have a very, very secure site. They have people there all day long. They have a watchman. They're all locked up. I just don't think it's going to occur there, but it very well, and it has occurred. I should say, just probably 5 years ago at the Stewart, 2 adult men at late at night, right after we put in a security system, went up there with high school students and tried to break the door down so they could go in and have a seance in the Stewart. I mean, this happens, and it happens in other places. And when it gets national attention, it's going to be on TV, it's going to get cut up into videos, and it's going to get broadcast. And I can guarantee you that we're going to have people coming to Butte to go into our mine yards to hunt for ghosts. So it's really hard for me because we have worked so hard and we're working so hard to do good preservation at these mine yards, especially the Stewart and the Anselmo. They had been designated open space conservation districts. In 2011, Lori Casey asked us if we wanted to do tours there to get a special variance from the zoning board. Butte-Silver did that. I led the charge, and we got a variance to conduct tours that would provide factual, historic information. And you know, there's such a big story to tell, and that's real and true about mining and cultural lifeways and reclamation and remediation, not searching for ghosts. And so we have that special use of variance. It also includes photography work, so people could go in and get, you know, high school graduations, wedding photos. You know, we have Tim Montana did film part of his video in the Anselmo Hoist House because we determined it wouldn't have any impact on the building, and he didn't even use it in his video. So I mean, there is proper use, but I just wish you would take in consideration my experience and what I've seen in the destructive nature that ghost hunting can have. And these are Butte's most precious, significant historic resources. They have national significance, and we're working real hard to get them open as interpretive centers where people can come and learn about the history and lifeways of Butte. They can get off the interstate, come in and get a great tour. That's what we're working for, and I would just hate to have anything cause further degradation. So, then I do have concerns about this release agreement itself. I don't know if you all looked at it or not, but if you look at the fourth paragraph, the last sentence, it said the producer, the television company, shall have the right to edit the content in any manner or form, and the owner waives any right to inspect or approve of any use of the content, including joint moral rights, if any, so they can film whatever they want up there. We don't have any say in that. Another thing that I think would be of concern is the location rights for this release shall be governed by the laws of the state of Tennessee. The owner hereby submits to the jurisdiction of the state and federal courts of the state of Tennessee, Knoxville, to resolve any disputes. So we're just signing our rights away. So I would hope you would just reconsider or consider carefully approval of signing this lease, location release. Thank you. Questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I did see the location release. This is scheduled to start on January 10th. It's troubling even when these things come to us at the last minute. We don't have a lot of time to even think about it. I do recall when we approved there was a zoning. It was an official, move by the zoning board to allow these tours to be given by our historic preservation officer, and Eric Hessler, of course, is our caretaker, our keeper of the mine yards, which are precious antiquities. I mean, I could make a smart remark about who do you want to call, but we're not going to go there. But in all seriousness, I think we need to be careful. It could be a slippery slope as far as opening it up to just anything. I mean, I think we have good reason and a right, and this is taxpayers' property, to pick and choose what we allow in our mine yards. So at this time, I would make a motion to deny the request of Communication 2020-12 and place this on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to deny the request in Communication 2020-12 and place the communication on file, I presume?
I did. Mm-hmm. Place on file.
Okay. Anything on the question? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Cindy. I've heard from someone pretty prominent in the volunteer work at the mine about, there may have been a little lack of communication with the historic preservation and maybe a little lack of communication with Eric at the, being the mine person for the county. But I understand all that, and the ghost thing is something, but we're a community that's looking for economic development. We're looking for a reason to bring people to town. I mean, and if we're going to look at the negative side of things, like they're going to come here and ruin stuff, that's not a good way to look at things. We've got to look at this glass as half full, not half empty. And I agree with you, that there could be some negative things come of this. But couldn't there be some contingencies put in this? These people are going to be here the 10th. Today's the 8th. They're probably on a plane coming here now. I agree there's some Tennessee's not right and the conditions, but couldn't we have a couple contingencies put in there where we could review this prior to release and take out some of them things, and make this kind of work for Butte-Silver Bow? I don't want to be one that says we're turning down people when we've got the Covalite Theater, we've got the, people coming to town start to give $10,000, $15,000 so they come here and make movies. And now we got a company that wants to come and make movies, and because we had a little lack of communication and they're being a little off the wall, paranormal type of stuff, whether you believe in ghosts or not. I mean, it's probably not my gig, but I still have a rough idea telling people no when our chief executive is requesting us, and he's kind of, made in a deal that they could come and do this. So I have a tough time voting against this. I mean, I agree with Mary and I agree with, Mr. Hassler, but I just don't think it's a good idea for Butte-Silver Bow in our condition to be starting to tell people that we don't want you to come here and film because we're afraid you might damage or destroy something. And if you want to talk about the house out there at Basin Creek Reservoir, that thing's been on the chopping block for years, so you can't go on there and say that that's been an issue for paranormal stuff. I mean, that's been my pet peeve for years, so I don't think I can deny this. I think I'm going to have to go on the other side and try to get a few terms and conditions put in there and maybe make this fly. Thank you.
Before I call on any of the other commissioners, I just want to explain how this ended up here. It was, they're already in town. They're in Anaconda. They had planned on filming in Anaconda and at the World Museum of Mining. And then they decided they were going to film on one of the mine yards, so they needed an access agreement signed by Butte-Silver Bow. It was brought in to me, and I cannot sign it without having the permission of this council. That is the reason I sent it to the Council of Commissioners for the approval to move forward on this. But I agree with Mr. Fisher that, it might be paranormal and it's a little bit different, but I don't know. Do we want to turn away some good publicity? If we could review it first, it'd be great. But I just wanted to explain how it ended up here from my desk. So, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Let me turn this on. County Attorney, I imagine that you've reviewed the documents with this agreement for Communication 10. And it does say Tennessee. It would be in the Court of Tennessee. Any complainants, is that standard? It looks like it's all pretty much standard and that they'd want to do things. So is there anything off color or anything that you noticed in this agreement?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, I didn't see the agreement until after it was on the agenda, but I did talk to the Chief Executive late this afternoon about that provision that did subject us to the laws of Tennessee after it was brought to my attention by Commissioner Shaw. And the Chief Executive's administrative assistant did contact the person requesting this location release, and he indicated that he would change that to the state of Montana because we don't want to be subject to the laws of Tennessee, and we do require our agreements to be, if someone's doing a service for us or utilizing our property, then it's occurring here, and we want the laws of the state of Montana to apply.
So that will be changed.
They indicated that they would change that, and I think they may have sent it over to Barb, but I don't know if they did.
I'll follow up on that. We did contact Mr. Flanagan, who is the person, he is out of state right now, but he had said it's basic boilerplate contract that they use, and it was a mistake that Tennessee was put in there instead of Montana, and they would correct that.
Thank you.
Mr. Sesso, did you want to add something to this? Okay, Eileen, fire away.
Mr. Chief Executive, so Mr. Sesso just pointed out that most times when we do have people accessing our mine yards, we have a access agreement that we have had them sign, and he suggested that perhaps the middle ground would be that if the council wanted to approve this activity to occur, that it would be contingent on the entity signing our access agreement and not the location release that they've provided, but the access agreement that we have dictated the terms of someone accessing our mine yards.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sesso and County Attorney Joyce, for that information. With that being said, I think it goes along right with what I was thinking with Commissioner Fisher was saying, that this is a good opportunity for Butte and such. So with that in mind, and even with a little bit weird, not a big thing with ghosts, but whatever, some people like it, I would make a motion to concur with communication 2020-12.
Substitute motion?
Substitute motion, thank you. With 2020-12, with those contingencies stated by Mr. Sesso and County Attorney Joyce.
And place the communication on file.
And place it on file.
Okay, we have a substitute motion made and seconded to concur with the request with the contingency that they sign our access agreement and follow all of our rules. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. One thing I love about being on the council is you never know what's going to come before you every night. Because tonight we have two requests, one for paranormal video, and then you'll later find out we have another photo shoot that involves wolves, mountain lions, bears, and leopards on our street. So it's kind of interesting because if that doesn't bring people to Butte because we have that in our streets, I don't know what will. But I agree with the communication that's going on right now. The only question that I have on Commissioner Anderson's request is, County Attorney Joyce, you mentioned that they sign our access agreement and we don't sign their agreement. Is that correct?
Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Morgan, I mean, yes, the access agreement probably is signed by both parties, but it lays out the terms of their ability to access our property.
So we won't sign their agreement, so we don't need that in a motion. Okay.
Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Is there any compensation to Butte-Silver as part of this contract? I see that they want to use the mine, but we don't. It doesn't look like we're getting anything in return other than publicity. So has there been any mention of transaction like a dollar amount or rental fee?
Molly, welcome to the discussion.
Turn yourself on there, Bill.
Mr. Palmer and commissioners, we did an access agreement several years ago. Some of you will probably remember they shot a zombie film at the Anselmo. I did that access agreement, and I just can't recall if there was compensation or not. But they were there for several days, and I think Mary was on site to make sure that nothing happened. But we do have one that we could certainly substitute, and I haven't been in discussions with them, but if you want to talk to them about compensation, I just don't recall if that one had compensation or not. Thank you.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. So I have a few questions on the motion. So Commissioner Anderson's motion was to concur and place on file. This communication says that we're going to sign this location release that I'm looking at right now. It doesn't say that you're going to sign our location release. And so I still have problems with that motion because this still says Tennessee. It still says that we waive all of our rights to whatever they want to put on this channel. So I still don't understand maybe the motion. I mean, this is the motion that we'd be voting on is this one that's still here, correct?
I guess if I could restate my motion, what I would like it to, and maybe County Attorney can clarify what my language should be on this, so I'll ask her to do so. But what I would like it basically to be would give them permission to film at these locations for the project with the stipulation instead of using their agreement that they signed and used our agreement. I think it accomplishes the same thing, but then it gets rid of the Tennessee courts, which they already stipulated that they would do. So we would just be swapping out one agreement that's in here with the one that County Attorney Maffei and Joyce have used before for similar ventures.
Okay. Does everyone understand the motion? Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. You know, I think I'm going to be voting against it. I think I'm agreeing with Mary McCormick. You know, I believe that we should probably stick to our heritage, what we know. You know, the mine yards, not what we kind of happened, might have happened. You know, so I think, you know, we owe it to the people to promote the mining heritage as it was. So I'm going to be voting against it.
Commissioner Rolls.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I'm also going to vote against it. I believe that when we publicize Butte, we need to publicize it in a positive manner, and I don't know that the paranormal in a uncontrolled environment such as the mine yard is appropriate. I have seen firsthand with Mary at the Basin Creek House what damage was done there, what was written on the walls before we tore the plaster out. That was people in Butte, Montana doing that, and we had no control over it. It wasn't a building that was occupied, and I really dislike the phrase in there, they can take whatever photos they want and do whatever they want with it. So, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. Once again, I'd just like to state that we're eliminating their agreement, and we're going to have our agreement, and our mines have limited access, and I'm sure that there's going to be someone there. When you people start comparing the house at Basin Creek compared to someone coming in, a national film company, coming in and wanting to film in a mine yard, to that house at Basin Creek, it just makes my blood boil. And you know, you guys even had no right to go out there and start tearing it apart. I mean, this goes back to Matt Vincent's days.
Point of order.
I mean, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. So, I mean, the other people that obviously did these ghost hunts didn't bring it to the council and have an insurance policy. I mean, they just went and did these as far as I was concerned. I mean, looking this company up on Google, obviously, that doesn't, I mean, I don't know. I mean, let's get the correct documentation. We have an insurance policy. Let's make sure the insurance policy is obviously to our standard, if you will, and let's charge them. I mean, I don't know. Again, here to help our town out and promote. I don't know how this is such a negative on, ghost hunting. These ghost hunters are obviously bad people and they tear buildings apart, but these guys at least have insurance, so if they tear it apart, at least they can fix it, I guess. I just want you to, there is this is a positive thing of a pretty reputable film company coming here to film stuff. It's not, again, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Anything further on the question? Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I was in agreement with Mary McCormick, and as I've listened to the conversation go, I tend to more agree with Commissioner Fisher. We just made a great deal with the Montana Studios, who is going to be bringing people exactly like this to our city to make movies, for all of these sorts of wonderful things. And if we send a message out there right now, that's why they're coming. They love our historical landscape. They love the things that they have that they can put in their movies. And if we send a message out now that says, well, now, yeah, we made that deal, but now we don't want that, I don't think that's wise for us to make. I don't think that's a wise decision. I think we can control any anticipated problems. I think that we have already done that. I don't know that there was an increase in vandalism at the mine after a zombie movie was shot. Maybe somebody can enlighten me on that, but I think this is something we need to support.
Thank you. Eric Hassler, did you have a comment?
Executive, member of council. So I'm not sure that Mary had a chance to review emails this afternoon, but we have an email from Dan Flanagan stating that they will not do any paranormal investigations in the mine yards. They are here. The purpose of the visit to the mine yards is to highlight the deep history of Butte and the mining associated with the community. So it takes a little bit of that out of there. I know it's not the appropriate venue, but I think this kind of shows that we need to formalize a process for access going forward. So I think we need to think of that. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we did receive an email from Mr. Flanagan at about 3:40 today stating that they would not do any paranormal investigations at the mine yards.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you. I wanted to know if I could call on Mary one more time just to have her to do a rebuttal on a couple of these comments. Is that okay? Thank you. Mary?
First of all, the reason I didn't want paranormal explorations at the mine yard is that it would be, here's the Stewart mine yard. We are doing things here at the Stewart mine yard. You name the mine yard, you're in the community. People know that. People will come in and try to find the ghosts in our mine yard. These people are coming to do work in other locations in Butte that'll give Butte this national attention. I just don't know why we have to focus it on our most precious resource. But I also want to say this company contacted me 2 weeks ago and called and asked me and said that they wanted to do, that they were coming to Montana, they were going to doing paranormal investigations at the prison in Deer Lodge, and they wanted to go to the Anselmo mine yard. And I told them then and there, if you want to come film at the Anselmo mine yard, we're happy to let you in. We're happy to talk about the history of the mine yard with you. We're happy to have you film that, but no ghost hunting in our mine yards. I don't think that's going to stymie economic development in Butte. There's going to be a lot of ghost hunting going on in other places, but these are special resources, and they shouldn't be subject to that. So I did tell them then and there that they could come to the Anselmo and film if they wanted to on the history, but no ghost hunting at the Anselmo mine yard. They said they would get back to me, and they never did. And the next thing I hear, they've gone to the chief executive, circumvented the process that it was supposed to include Eric and I, and gone straight to the chief executive. And I guess that's their prerogative, and it's certainly Chief Executive's prerogative to bring that forward to you. But I would just like the record to be straight. I want people to come to Butte. I want films to happen in Butte. The zombie film, it doesn't say this is happening in the Anselmo Martin necessarily in Butte, Montana. But you go online, you look up Montanay, Arkansas, and what you see is video after video of ghost hunters there, and that's what we're going to have if we let this ghost hunting happen in our mine yards. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Well, I think what Mr. Hassler said, where they're not going to be actually doing paranormal investigation or ghost hunting in the mine yard, they're kind of going right along with your original intent. So I think that just kind of eliminates that whole argument. So thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Just a point of clarification. There is no policy that I am aware of that this body adopted that says there's no paranormal activity investigations in Butte, unless I'm wrong, but I'll just put that out there.
Okay. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. One of the things I want to make clear about my statements is I'm not worried about the film company doing damage to the resource. I'm more concerned about folks that will come in and try to reproduce that as ghost hunters. I think I might be able to support this if we have it in writing from that organization that the paranormal will not be filmed nor presented as being in the mine yard at the Stewart mine. We did get an email, but I would like it in writing to add it to the agreement. Would you mind amending that?
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Olson. I mean, look, we got this agreement. Now we have another agreement. Now we have an email, and nothing against Mr. Hassler. I appreciate that information, but I mean, what are we? It sounds like they're completely going around everything that we're going to do, and we don't even. So, as far as we know, with this motion, they're going to show up on January 10th, film whatever they want, leave. And we don't have anything. I do not feel comfortable as a commissioner signing off on this. I do not have nearly enough information. And this feels like it's just getting rammed down our throat. So I'm still not supporting this. This is crazy.
Commissioner Anderson, did you have something?
I think we almost have to take him at the word. If people want it in there, someone can make a substitute motion. But I think with conversation that they had, they went back and submitted the email saying that, hey, you know what, we want to focus on the history of Butte with the Anselmo mine yard. We don't want to do paranormal. I think we have to kind of take them at the word. We decided a while ago with the 40 East Broadway that we're going to use that center now for film and for the film industry, like was stated. We have to, I think it'd be a great idea if we're going to be trying to go into the movie business to put some parameters on what we may want and may not want to be showcased. But I think when we limit ourselves, it's not necessarily a good idea. But I think that we need to just kind of take them at the word, see how it goes, and I hope everyone supports this. I think it'll be a great economic driver for the community. Thank you.
Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'm all in favor of publicity, but as a matter of procedure for the council, we've already modified the contract, and now we're asking to vote based on the premise of an email that none of us received. I fully trust the Superfund department that things wouldn't be damaged. I do think that not all publicity is good publicity, but like Commissioner Frederickson, it sounds like, and Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Shaw, I'm not supporting this because we have modified it to the point we don't even know what we're voting on. We didn't read the email, we didn't get it, and we're looking at a contract from the state of Tennessee that we've modified to our own. If you compare it to the next communication, they filled out a special use permit, have all of the signatures, have it in time, And David Yarrow is one of the most prominent figures in the world of photography. I mean, if David Yarrow wants to do it and he can fill out all of the correct paperwork and follow the procedure, I'm like totally in favor of this. This is incredible. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But in terms of this contract, we've already modified it to ours. We've asked for an access agreement, and we're going to vote based on an email that we didn't receive. So I'm not supporting it.
Okay.
Can you rephrase the motion? Substitute
Restate it. Are you kidding?
Substitute.
Okay, the motion, there's a substitute motion to concur in the request to have an access agreement signed, but we're going to assign our own access agreement and not theirs. And there would be no paranormal. That wasn't part of it? Okay. It's just concur, have them sign an access agreement, our access agreement, if they want to move forward. You got?
I'm fine with the paranormal or the non-paranormal people or the paranormal. Let's go.
Okay, we'll just leave it out of the motion then. Okay, the motion is to have them sign our access agreement, concur, and place it on file. Will everyone please vote? John. Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. We have 6 nays, 5 nays and 6 nays.
This motion dies.
Go back to the first one.
So we'll go back to the original motion, which was to deny the request and place it on file. Is anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote? No, this one's 6.
No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this is 6. There was 6 yeas and 5 nays.
So motion carries. The request is denied. Next, we'll go into number 16, communication number 2020-18. Michael Stickney, 1136 West Broadway, informing Council Commissioners of an incident that occurred because of an unmaintained sidewalk located at 1142 West Broadway, and is asking that the county address the problem, as it seems to be the property owned by Butte-Silver Bow. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I think Mr. Stickney is in the audience, and I'd let him speak here in a second, but I just wanted to make a comment that we passed a little more enforceable type of ordinance on the sidewalk cleaning here a week or so ago through the Judiciary Committee, and I'd just like to state that, if we're going to be making these ordinances and doing things, we got to lead by example. I mean, we can't be telling people and finding people for not shoveling their sidewalk when we're not taking care of our own as the county. And I'd just like to state that if we're going to make ordinances, we should be leading by example. And I think Mr. Stickney, if he wants to get up and say a few words, he's here and he's welcome to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Stickney.
Thank you, Chief Executive, Commissioner Fisher, and the other members of the council. Just, I agree. You said it beautifully, Jim. It would be nice to see the city properties maintained at the same level that they're requesting the private citizens to. And I think there's a number, perhaps as many as 10 sidewalks along the Copperway walking trail that cross city property that are in the same situation as the one directly above my house. So I'd love to see that addressed. Thank you.
I'd like to add that we did look at the map and we checked out which ones we do own, and we are addressing those sidewalks. So we appreciate you bringing this forward. I'm sorry about your accident you had on it, but we will do as much as we can to get these sidewalks cleared off. And I know that one has been done, and they will continue to do it. And we're looking at the maps to get all the random sidewalks around town to see which ones we own so that we can cover them. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. With that being said, I would make a motion that we refer Communication 2020-18 to the Chief Executive Office and the Butte-Silver follow-up with the removal of Butte-Silver properties. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to refer the communication to my office for follow-up. Is there anything on the question? All those in favor? Please, everyone please vote.
Old school.
It's been a long night already. Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Okay, next we'll go to communications to be read and acted upon. Communication number 2020-02, Jim Fisher, County Commissioner, District Number 6, requesting Council of Commissioners to hire a legal firm experienced in environmental law to review the consent decree prior to the council signing off on this document. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. To start off with, I didn't really intend for this to be read and acted upon. So after I give my little spiel, I will make a motion that we move it to the Committee of the Whole for further discussion. But to start that out, I hope everyone on the council read my letter. And, when you get the brief newspaper or TV attention, it kind of creates a little activity. And the thing about it is I'd just like to start out by saying that the Superfund and ARCO BP and EPA has hampered the economy of Butte-Silver Bow for many, many years, 30 years. It's hampered our economy. And yes, they've given us some money in different trust funds, and they've fixed trails, and they've worked up, some drainage uptown and, on the hill, and they've, put some things. But there's been a lot of failure in that, too. John Sess will be the first to admit. He stated at the archives some time ago that there's been some errors and there's been some mistakes. And, the things like that, we don't know what's in this consent decree. And I'm really not that educated to read 1,000 pages of things like that. On my desk tonight when I got here, there was probably 15 or 20 pages for us to read. So all I'm trying to state here is that Superfund and the EPA, ARCO BP, has hampered our economy of Butte-Silver Bow. Now, even when they give us money like the SARTA money, $15 million of SARTA money, it all comes with strings attached. It's good for historical preservation. It's good for festivals. You got the RMAP program. It's got strings attached. What about ARCO BP giving this community some money to take care of the things that really would help economic development? I've never seen anybody go to the negotiating table, so I don't know what was there. But I don't know if anyone ever brought up that, why don't we get a few $1 million every year to fix our roads or to fix our infrastructure? The only time we've ever got anything to fix our infrastructure was when private citizens like Sister Mary Jo, Ron Davis, and Fritz Daly sued and won. That's when we got our water system fixed. That's when we got things done around this community. What's coming up here in a 1,000-page document that's been written by very, very intelligent attorneys from ARCO, BP, the state of Montana, and our crew here in Butte, which we're very proud of. They've done a great job. All I'm saying here in this document is I think that we should probably, if it comes to us, take a look and maybe have somebody take a look at it before we make a decision for this community that is an everlasting decision that will affect our grandchildren forever. So with that being said, I'm open for conversation, but I would really like to have this sent to the Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Fisher, I guess I don't have a problem sending it to the Committee of the Whole, but I guess I'm kind of looking at it. who's going to feed these lawyers and all these people the information? You know, is it going to be the same people that we're relying on now? Is it going to be our Superfund people? So we're going to have our Superfund people, the only ones that really know, you know, they're going to be educating the lawyers. So I guess that's the point. Who would be our what do you want to call it? Experts, I guess, to feed the lawyers, and how much time is it going to take for them to get up to snuff? You know, I think we got some of the best folks, probably the most educated folks, which is kind of a unique situation, you know, on Superfund. So I'm like I said, I'm thinking, yeah, if you want to send a committee to the whole, no, I wouldn't have a problem with that. You know, this would be for your communication. We can talk about it more, but I think there's some more questions to be answered.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. Thank you, Mr. Sorge. We don't have, where we want to send the full document, the 1,000 pages or whatever, how many pages we get. What I would like to do is I would like to send that document in its entirety to a firm and have them review it. And just put it in layman's terms. When you get in a car accident and the insurance adjuster comes and tells you, yeah, you broke your back, you know, we're going to give you some money and it's all good and we're going to do this, and somebody else says that's a good deal and stuff. Most people go get an attorney to have them look at it. And in this case here, we're making a decision for this whole community. And I'm not saying that our people have done a bad job. All I'm saying is that maybe, just maybe, we should have someone reread this and tell us what's in it and what isn't in it. Because as I state, from what I understand by meeting with the Mr. Friggs, the new person here in town, there's 2 or 3 pages of acronyms. And, I mean, the definition of acronyms is tough. And, I mean, I just don't think that a lot of us here on this council have the legal expertise or the knowledge to read a 1,000-page document and make a decision that will forever affect our community.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. And, you know, thank you, Commissioner Fisher. I understand what you're trying to do here. A couple comments that I have is, you know, we already have an in-house law firm. It's the county attorney's office, and we pay them very well. The other thing that I want to point out is that, so my wife, who's probably not watching, but I will give her a shout out anyway, named Ivy, is an environmental attorney. So I asked her to look into what her colleagues would charge on something like this. And she got back to me and said that it depends on the attorney's experience, operating expenses, and location of their practice. But the fees can range from $100 to $200 an hour. For something specialized like this with Superfund, it can be as high as $500 per hour. So I just want us to think about that and how we would possibly pay for something like this. And I'm not going to call Director Gleason up here. I guess we'll save that for the Committee of the Whole meeting next week. But people come to her and us all the time asking for money, and the thing we tell them is we do not have any. So I want us to think about how we would pay for this. The other thing that I want for us to think about is how do we select a firm? Do we have it go out for an RFP? Do we have, how do we know that that firm has not already worked with EPA, Atlantic Richfield, related companies, engineering companies? We wouldn't know. So, I mean, I appreciate what Commissioner Fisher is trying to do, but right now this is something that I am completely against for those reasons. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just point out that this county did hire an expert in the field, the Gordon Hart. He's an experienced and very well-known environmental lawyer, and I think he charged a little bit more than Wayne Harper does, but it was about, at that time when we did the allocation agreement, was well over $500 an hour, and that was years ago, so I imagine it's around $700 to $1,000 an hour you would be paying this person. And I guess the question you want to ask, or I want to ask, is what are you going to task this attorney or the law firm to do? I don't think we want to throw a 1,000-page document at them and say, just take your time and read this over and tell if it's a good deal or not. I mean, that would be an expensive trial and error thing. I think that if you're going to ask an attorney to do anything, you've got to tell them what you want them to do. Don't make it so broad that otherwise Finance and Budget Director Gleason would be coming unglued. But there's a dollar, we have to remember that we use that top-notch firm to settle the allocation agreement, which in my mind is the key portion of this whole thing. It's who's paying for what in the end. And I think that because of that exercise, we came out very well. There's backstops built into that if we run out of money on some of the projects, then they have to re-up or take over that project themselves. So we're covered real well on how that's going to happen in the future. This 1,000-page document, I would hate to pay an attorney to look at it because there's an awful lot of technical facts in there that, if you hire an attorney that's experienced, I don't know, you would be hiring. They would have to rely on outside engineering firms, too, which would jack up the cost. I don't think you could just get an attorney to sit down and look at this and tell you whether or not it's a great deal. So I guess I would ask that you be thinking about, if you are going to ask an attorney to be hired, what are you going to ask them to do and put parameters on it? Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. This is another one of those topics that is going to be very lengthy, and we're going to have a lot of discussion moving forward with it. As soon as I seen your letter, I actually called Ms. Gleason and asked her what my budget was for professional services. And keep in mind, there's no extra zeros on this. I have $5,125 in my professional services budget. And so that might be a challenge, but we've had harder things that we've had to overcome, and we can do it. But I guess thinking back on how we got to where we're at, first of all, we haven't seen the consent decree yet. We will be getting it pretty soon, I hope. And it is a 1,000-page document. And that is something that this council is going to be tasked with, of educating ourselves with, if we haven't done so already. And that's going to take a lot of work with the county attorney's office, with Mr. Sesso and the environmental remediation team, and everybody that was involved in that negotiation. We did have a member of our body sit on that negotiating team from, I don't know how long, Dan, you've been on it, but the majority of it going forward. And I think one of the unfortunate things, which is the legal thing, is that they couldn't talk to us about it because of the gag order and all of that stuff. But eventually that will all be released to us, and we will have to vote on it. From what I'm being told, it's not going to be submitting the communication on Friday and have us vote on Wednesday. It's going to be, here's the process, here's what we're looking to do. There's going to be public hearings moving forward. There's going to be plenty of time that we can sit down and ask those questions and before we move forward. And in my take, if anybody comes to this council and says we need a decision today, then I'm going to say I'm not comfortable in voting, and we'll stall it, and that's our power to do it to a point. And that's my take on it. As far as hiring outside counsel, I have the same questions as everybody else. One, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to select the firm to go forward? Money is not something that we should be really afraid of. We have to make educated decisions. But we've hired engineers and we've hired other people to review this, and they've come back and they've told us this way or this way. And we've sat here and said, I think you're wrong because I don't personally believe you. And so that's what this body is going to have to figure out. We have good resources, and I'd hate to not rely on them and the scientific backgrounds that they have and our consultants have and all that going forward. So to me, I get what you're doing, but I think we've been represented thus far, and now it's our job to make sure that we're comfortable and we do our homework to move forward on the consent decree. And it's going to take time, and it's going to be hard. But we're not up here because this is an easy job. So that's all I have to say with that.
Mr. Sesso, would you like to make a statement on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, members of the council. John Sesso, Superfund Coordinator for Butte-Silver. I just wanted to take 1 minute and explain how this is actually going to work going forward. As Commissioner Morgan just pointed out, it would be remiss on our part and everyone's part if we were intending to just lay this document on your lap and then just walk away and expect you to vote for it. That is can't happen, and we've made a commitment already, and we have got a commitment from EPA and the state of Montana and ARCO to be with us to explain what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to work. It's probably not going to be for another week or two before we're going to see in public these documents. But when they're ready, they're going to be released by EPA. They're going to be put out there on the net for everyone and anyone to look at and study. Butte-Silver, along with the other entities, are working to try to boil it down to some documents, some summaries that will basically brief you on the major key takeaways in this document. The consent decree itself is 100 pages. It's got 90-some provisions, and it's pretty cut and dried. It's the legal document that we have poured over. I could tell you, we poured over it now for 2 years, since January of 18 when we agreed in principle, and it's pretty tight. I am real confident in the legal advice that we have gotten through our county attorney's office over these last couple of years, and the experience that Deputy County Attorney Maffei has gained since 2002, and our county attorney, who's been with us since the beginning in 1991, is really as valuable. The legal expertise as you can get at this point. And we've held our own, and I am going to venture to say that we have prevailed in all of the arguments that we have made on behalf of our citizens as we've sat as your representatives in this communication, but in these negotiations. But it's, after you get the 100-page consent decree, there's 9 attachments. And a couple, 2, 3 of them are maps. One's very important. It's called a modification to the Record of Decision of 2006. It's really going to point out all of the lessons that we've learned and the changes that we need to make in that document based on those lessons learned and what we have to do to go forward. And then there's the fourth Appendix D is the scope of work, which describes specifically all of the work that's going to get done now and in the next 5 years, and then how that work is going to be monitored and taken care of over the course of the next 100 years. And then there's other documents in the bundle that provide for how everything is going to get paid for, which is essentially everything's going to get paid for by ARCO, let's face it. And we all, as the Chief Executive pointed out, we've already negotiated our allocation agreement, and our interests as the local government and as the community are well protected in the specific terms that we negotiated in 2006, and those terms are going to serve us well on into the future. The dollars will change, but the terms of that agreement will not, and that's been bought and paid for by Mr. Hart and the $500,000 investment we made in 2006 to pay him to assist our county attorney's office to make sure we were doing everything in the best interests of our community. But back to the process, we have what we have planned in February is a series of workshops and seminars where all of us will give the public on different days and different times of the day an opportunity to come and learn anything they want. We're preparing the best we can, some summary documents that summarize everything in these agreements. And once we feel we have done our level best to educate and inform everybody, including you, and we're willing to spend as much time individually or as a group to communicate and explain anything and everything about these documents, then and only then will we submit this consent decree to the council for your consideration and approval. And that would probably take us into March. But we're in no rush. We're not going to rush after making us wait for 30 years to get to this point. We certainly aren't going to rush through any decision-making process, and we're going to take our sweet time to make sure everybody is informed, educated, understands what we're signing, and gets their questions answered to your satisfaction. So I guess I want to just stick up for the team that has represented you over the course of these many years, particularly in these last two. We've read this thing frontwards and backwards at least a dozen times. Every time it gets changed, we've got to reread it to make sure that the change, how it comports with the rest of the documents. So we know it. We know it very well. I think we've had great legal representation. We've had good technical representation. Everything that we could not figure out on our own, we have hired our own technical experts. We have retained Water Environmental Technologies here in town. They have consulted with us throughout the process on all of the more complex technical matters where we felt we needed that third-party input to make sure we were getting the best deal for our community. So we have sought out and got the technical expertise, both technical and legal, that we thought was necessary to represent this community in the most effective way. So we have a fairly lengthy educational and informational process laid out so that nobody feels like you're going to get dumped on and that we're going to expect you to make a decision without the understanding of what we're going to say. We're confident going in, as I have said at this podium many times over the course of the last 30 years. We've done a lot of good things, and we've learned from the implementation of the projects that we have done. And now this consent decree, and more specifically the scope of work in this consent decree, really addresses a lot of the issues that have been brought to you as a commission and as the representative body of our community on what about this and what about that and what about these things. And I'm here to tell you that we are addressing those issues, and you'll see the proof will be in the pudding when these documents are in front of us. So we have a full process ready to go, and I think that will alleviate your concerns to whatever extent you believe then we should get additional expertise. I would ask you to reserve your judgment until that time, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, John. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Just a couple of comments about Mr. Fish's proposal. I think it's a great idea to have many voices. I appreciate that a majority of the council seems to rush to the defense of staff, that they'll do a wonderful job of advocating for us with this issue, but 5 minutes ago we didn't trust them enough to advocate the position of a contract to film a 30-minute documentary on Ghost, but we're going to trust them with a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. Possibly that's taken 10 years to go through. So, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around. And so to help wrap my brain around things, I looked up cost. And one of my favorite words with law is pro bono, free lawyer work, and typing that in for environmental. With all the green energy advocacy and the climate change advocacy, I found 20-some groups that do pro bono law work for environmental matters. And I think when we're looking at Superfund like this, I think there's a way where we could eliminate some of that cost drastically. For example, one of the pages I picked up in 5 minutes up here was $15 million from a law firm in Stanford with Stanford University to go towards issues directly like this. So I think there's outside money that we could do, and we could really use some of these programs to really spur. So I think this is something that's wonderful that Mr. Fisher brought up, and I commend him on his due diligence that this is a decision that we're going to be tasked with making that's going to affect the history of Butte from here on out. And I think we need to have every little piece at our disposal, and any extra due diligence that we do in this matter is well deserved to our community. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. Thank you, John Sesso. I respect your knowledge immensely on this event. You know that. But I do have questions about everything, and that's part of my job. So the thing is, I guess we are not going to have a chance to amend any of this document. And I listen to what you say, and I listen to what Dave, Chief Executive Palmer says, but you guys know. You've been in the meetings. How would you like to be sitting where I'm at and not know nothing about it and have to make that vote? Think about that a minute. You know, we are sitting here uneducated on this document, and yet you guys are sitting up here telling us what you do know. Now, if I knew what you know, I might be as gung-ho as the rest of you. But it's always the unknown that scares people, and it's the unknown that's got me bothered here. And I'm not saying that we're not making a good deal or a bad deal. All I'm saying is it's a forever decision, and I just think after we get the document, after we look it over, if we have questions, rather than ask somebody that's already been there, let's ask an outside party and see. That's all. But you know there's a lot of questions aren't answered. The water quality issue has not been answered. Silverboat Creek has not been answered with Judge Newman's decision. We got the lawsuit that's sitting in the Supreme Court over at Opportunity. That's not been resolved. That will be resolved here in about March or April. Some of them will weigh in on this. And I can't get into it any deeper tonight because I have to agree a little bit with what Anderson said. We couldn't make a decision on a 30-minute movie a little while ago, and now we're all ready to jump on and rubber stamp a document that is going to affect us for the rest of our life. And I don't think you or I or Dave Palmer will be here to see it. So thank you. I just appreciate your help. Thanks.
Geez, I hope so. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I'll keep this really brief. I don't think that anyone during this discussion, anyone is saying that we're just going to rubber stamp anything through. I think it's been pretty clear that what Chairman Morgan said was no one's going to vote yes on this thing without having all the details. And so I'll leave it at that. I don't think that anyone's saying that we're just going to pass something through. So anyway.
Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I understand your concerns, but also I'm on the other side of the curtain. And one of the things that I know after sitting in meetings for 2 years with, I don't know how many lawyers, but the state probably has 3 or 4 lawyers that sit in on it. The EPA has 3 or 4 lawyers that sit in on these, and ARCO, of course, has their law firm. One thing to remember, though, is that besides Butte-Silver and our constituents, each one of you is also a constituent of the state of Montana, and they're fighting for you. Whether or not you believe it, they are. I've seen it in the meetings. Same with the EPA. Even though they're in Washington, D.C., their bottom line is they need to protect the citizens of the United States, and we're all citizens of the United States. Those lawyers are working for us, the EPA lawyers, the state lawyers, and our own lawyers, and all the technical people. That's only half of the equation. There's a lot of technical stuff that goes on. You would, after going through those discussions and the 1,000 pages, and it's taken 2 years for that many lawyers to go through it and nitpick everything, and it needs to be nitpicked. I mean, they bring up stuff and I go, well, I guess that makes sense. And but to hire a lawyer, hand them a 1,000-page document and say, is this any good? It's going to be an expensive proposition, and I don't know that we're going to get a good answer. Also, by going on pro bono legal work, it's kind of like one of the reasons that you don't buy your heart and lung machine at the dollar store. If you want the top people, you're going to have to pay for them. And I really do think that the people that we've hired, both internally and on contract, have given us good legal and technical expertise. It's really expensive to do this. I think they're all working for us. I don't want you to rubber stamp it. I want you to understand it. I think what we're trying to do also is we're not just going to say, here's the document. Tell us if you want to pass this in 2 weeks or not. I think we're going to do a lot of education, and if you have questions, I think everybody's prepared to answer those questions. So that's kind of my view from the side of the curtain that I can at least talk about at this point. But I agree that we need to know everything we can about it, and I think the Superfund group and the EPA and the state, they're all going to get together and give you all the information, and I think that's probably the best information we're going to get. But thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. The only thing that I'm going to say is it's been said tonight that our group here has been involved in this how many years? 20, more than that, 30 years. And so to me, if I have a question, I would go to them as a resource rather than some lawyer that is, I'm assuming, out of state to answer my question that just has reviewed it. And I mean, and make my decisions based on that. I mean, they're going to be able to give me what they know, and then if I don't feel that that's enough, then I have to go somewhere else, go to the state or find somebody that can answer my question. So that's the resource that I would use if I'm going to have questions, which I know I'm going to have a bunch of questions on this. I mean, as far as hiring an attorney or a law firm to review that and tell me what to do, I don't know if that's any better or not. So I'm kind of iffy about that. I'm at the point right now, I'm going to make a motion that we deny communication 2020-02 and place on file.
We have a motion made and seconded to deny the request in communication 2020-02 and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. Thank you, Chairman Morgan, for your input. It's a fact we can't amend this document. We're going to take it or leave it as it is. So I guess if we've come to that point, why even read the document? Why even go that point? We might as well just vote right now and be done. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Now, on that remark, we are arguing over a document we haven't even seen. If we get this document, we don't like it, at that point, we can say, hey, we better get somebody else to tell us what's going on. But right now, I disagree with doing that. At some point of this game, we got to trust the people who are working for us. A lot of these people put their heart and soul into this for a long time. They're Butte people. So if I'm going to trust them, I'm going to trust these Butte people who have been working their you-know-what off on this for a long time. Also, our job, being in this position, this is going to be a hard decision, but we're going to have to do everything in our power and reach out to every smart person we know that can help us out on this. again, the money to have another lawyer or somebody else look at this, I really, at this point, until I see the document, I feel like it's a waste of time. It's mentioned in the paper, it could be a 1,000-page document. Mr. Sesso just mentioned tonight of 100. We're assuming things right now we don't even know of. And all the other things, part of the consent decree, the creek and everything, that's all future things that are going to happen. I mean, like the fact saying like we should just vote on it now and not even read it, like we need to, let's get this document, let's look over it. I mean, now knowing that, I knew Ivy was a lawyer, now that I know that she's an environmental lawyer, I'm probably going to go to her house when I get the document a lot and really bug the Fredericks. So, my God, we need to trust the process and, really, my goodness, again, these people in Butte, Montana, they're not kicking us under the bus, or there's this whole scenario of this. I got to quit talking. Peace and love.
Okay. Anything further? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I would like to make a substitute motion that we hold Communication 2020-02 in Committee of the Whole.
Second. We have a substitute motion made and seconded to hold Communication 20-2002 in the Committee of the Whole. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I guess before I vote on this, Commissioner Fisher, by holding it in the Committee of the Whole, what are we going to gain? What's your thoughts?
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. More input from the public, hopefully. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Just on the input of the public's going to have an opportunity during public sessions to ask any questions that they have regarding it as well. So as far as that goes, that's where they'd be.
Okay. Anything further on the question? Everybody understand the motion? Substitute motion? What's that?
You just want to repeat that motion.
It's to hold the Communication 2020-02 in the Committee of the Whole.
And it's a substitute.
Mm-hmm. Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
We have 4 yeas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nays.
Motion dies. We'll go back to the original motion to deny the request in Communication 2020-02 and place the communication on file. Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
We have 3 nay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8. I'm sorry, 7. Yeah, 8. Yeah, 8.
Yeah.
8 yay. 8 yay and 3 nay.
Okay, motion carries. Next, we'll go to Communication 2020-19. This is the one that we suspended the rules for. Oh no, I skipped one, didn't I? Must be in a hurry to get out of here or something. We'll go to number 2, Communication 2020-04. Michael Townsend requesting Council of Commissioners to consider the purchase of my home located at 105 West Porphyry. I will comply with all rules and regulation of the community or the county enrichment program. Is Mr. Townsend here? Would you like to come up and speak? You got to. Would you push up red? There you go. It's on now.
I'd just like to say that I feel that I was wronged by the city of not helping me in the way I paid for my taxes. I was delinquent, but not delinquent enough to have my property taken. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to purchase my property back if I'm allowed to.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, and thank you for coming tonight. County Attorney Joyce, could you just, in answer to Mr. Townsend's remark that that there was a discrepancy in his paying his taxes, could you please clarify for the council members and what process has occurred already?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Shaw, I think I will let the Treasurer, Lori Baker, explain the process and what notices were provided and how Mr. Townsend's property came to be subject to tax deed.
Lori.
Thank you, Mrs. Joyce. Thank you, Commissioner Palmer, Chief Executive Palmer, Commissioners. Our tax deed process happens on a yearly basis, and this is typically when we start our process. So last year at this time, Mr. Townsend was sent notice from my office informing him that he had delinquent taxes and to contact our office. That's just an informal notice of delinquent taxes. Once March rolls around, we have our tax deed process starting. We know who our title search folks are, and additional fees get added at that point. But just to go back a little bit, the tax liens that we're collecting the taxes on at that point are 3 years in the rears, or their expiration date is coming to an end. And so the city and county of Butte-Silver Bow, or any city and county in the state of Montana, has to either collect the taxes or sell the property. And so the tax lien that the property at 105 West Porphyry had delinquent was tax lien of 2015. I'm going to look here. I'm not sure if it was both halves. Yes, it was both halves of 2015, so it was a full year of 2015 that he had delinquent, and that was the tax liens that we were tax deeding last year.
But I had paid 2016 and 2017 somehow, and wasn't aware that 15 should have been paid before those two.
Yes, Mr. Townsend, that is correct. So we went through a House bill change in 2017. House Bill 18 was passed by our Montana legislator, and a lot of things had changed at that time. A lot of folks were able to come in and just pay their oldest year of taxes up until that point. When that changed, our statute for time to pay, that changed also in a section of the Montana Code annotated 1516-102, and that section 5A added in there that anybody coming in to pay delinquent taxes, in layman's terms, if there's current year taxes due or owing, those taxes need to be paid prior to paying the delinquent taxes. That changes throughout the year. Currently, just for an example, right now, when we're doing 2016 taxes, tax liens, the folks can come in and pay the first half of 2019 because that's the current year that's due right now, and all of their 2016 taxes to get off the tax deed list. Mr. Townsend's taxes, and I don't have the history clear back to 2014, but when House Bill 18 was passed in the 2017 legislature, we were going into 2016 taxes. So when he came in to pay his 2014 taxes, and I'm not sure of the exact dates, he would have had to pay whatever was due in 2016 in order to pay those 2014 delinquent taxes. The same with the 2017 taxes. He would have had, in order to pay 2015 taxes, he would have had to pay whatever was current at that time. The last record that I have of Mr. Townsend coming into my office paying taxes was on August 9th of 2018, we did not take tax deed or record our tax deed on his 2015 tax lien until August 15th, 2019. So it had been a little over a year before we even recorded that. Other notifications that do go out in this process is a certified letter. There was a certified letter sent to Mr. Townsend's property, both sent to him and also the current occupant. Those notices were signed by a Bridget Dahlman. That was on 6/1 of 19, and that was the notice that a tax deed would be issued. Both the current occupant notice and Mr. Townsend's notice were both signed by Bridget. There was just a couple other notices that were sent also based on the title search that we received from the title company, and those were also signed for. It's publicized in the newspaper twice, 2 consecutive weekends, or Sundays. We use Sunday because that's typically when people would get the newspaper, and that's by state law. So we have to follow our state law in order to do this process. And before we do our auction. Even though we take tax deed in August, it's typically in the August area, the folks are still able to redeem their properties up until the day before the sale. I have to look back at when we took the Dumas on tax deed, and I had the owner in my office until 6 o'clock in the evening the day before the tax sale, and he had left to go get his cell phone charger because he was trying to come up with secure funds. So we help people. We've been trying to educate them ever since 2017 legislature passed this huge House bill that affected my office with delinquent taxes in every sense of the form. And when the property owner was not able to come up with the funds, we finally closed the office with Montana Standard being in the office at that time at 6:30 because he did not come back. But he came back the next morning, and it was too late for him to purchase his property, repurchase his property, or redeem his property because we were coming up here for sale. So if anybody has any questions. Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
Commissioner Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you. Was the house sold at this sale?
It was not.
And so it would go up to the next sale?
That's correct.
And so would he be able to redeem the tax at any point up until the day before this upcoming sale?
Not before the second sale, and I'll have Eileen address that.
County Attorney Joyce.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, the period to redeem is just before the first tax sale, but the law requires you to hold a second tax sale. He could go to the second tax sale auction and bid on the property, but he's not allowed to redeem it. The period of redemption has passed.
Okay, thank you.
That's why they told me I had to be here to ask you guys if I could repurchase my property back.
So County Attorney Joyce, what are the options that this council has?
Mr. Chief Executive, so basically what the law provides that you are required to offer delinquent tax property twice, and you're supposed to have a second sale 6 months after the first sale. And there used to be, the law used to provide that in between the first and second sale, that this body could negotiate a sales price. They could sell the land by negotiated sale at a price that's not less than the sale price that was fixed for the original auction. So there was a process, that allowed somebody to come before the governing body and allow them to request that they buy the property, but that section of the law was changed, and now in between the first and second auction, what the law says is the land is supposed to be retained by the county and is subject to the provisions of Title 7, Chapter 25. And under that, those statutes, it says that you're supposed to establish procedures for the disposal of real property that's to be used or disposed of in the best interest of the county and for the public benefit and welfare. So that was kind of the basis, because that is the purpose of that part, that when Mr. Townsend contacted our office, we indicated that he could potentially come to this body to make an argument that it's in the best interest of the county and for the public benefit and welfare for him not to lose his property, because public policy would probably favor not having people lose their homes. However, there are additional provisions in those statutes that indicate that if it's worth more than $20,000, there's supposed to be an appraisal. We have used the appraisal by the Department of Revenue when we set the prices for the tax sale. And then the further requirement is that you're supposed to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution. So I think that you probably would be required, if you were to even consider Mr. Townsend's request, to schedule a public hearing and then ask that a resolution be adopted. And there are certain requirements in that resolution which seem to more indicate that it's not just on a house by house or a property by property basis, that it's supposed to be kind of a process that you develop that includes approving locations for sale and whether the sale will be conducted by use of an internet website or online location, the requirement that all sales locations be accessible to the public, the type of sales for which a public auction is required, who is going to conduct the auction, procedures for issuing permits and leases. And so, you could have a public hearing on his request, but then you'd have to have a resolution that kind of sets out a process on how you would decide to dispose of property in between a first and second tax sale. And of course, if you know that when you have a public hearing, it would be required to have 2 publications 6 days in between. So we would have to allow that public hearing to happen, and the second tax sale is scheduled for
February 5th.
So we'd be running up right against that before you could even get a resolution passed.
He could go to the next tax sale and repurchase his property at the tax sale on February 5th?
Yes, he could participate in the auction.
Okay. So those are your 2
But
options.
in the meantime, I'm still subject to somebody else purchasing my property. And I'm not really 3 years behind, I'm only 2 years behind. Because when that law changed, I believe that 2015 was still delinquent. When I went up and paid 2 years, at the same day I came up and paid 2 years, I believe they should have had me pay 2015 instead of 16 and 17, don't you think?
We have to follow the state law.
Well, wouldn't state law say that you as a worker would have me do it the correct way?
Absolutely, and that's what we educate all the public on what they would be more beneficial in paying. Absolutely.
Did you, Commissioner Sorge?
Thank you, Chief Executive. Ms. Baker, or Patrick, have we ever done this before? I mean, is this something that has this body?
Not during my term. The statute that Eileen was referring to at one time, I guess there was a situation. I can't speak of that because I wasn't here at that time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I read here in the letter, it says that on Friday, December 20, 2019, he had $4,700 to repurchase his home. Is that correct, Ms. Patrick?
I don't know. I I've done my process. It's in the middle of the two sales. I haven't seen the money, nor would I take it unless it was approved by this body.
Follow up, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. So if he did come up with the whatever amount it is today, plus the sale fee of the clerk and recorder, would that be acceptable to your office?
I don't like to see anybody lose their property. If that is what you want to do moving forward, I would agree to whatever is agreed upon.
I do have it accessible.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. And my thought process is on this is if we could keep him in his home and he has the money to come up to date, you know, it's looking like it's going to be $5,000 or give or take a little that way, that we would eliminate one property on a tax sale, we'd keep him in his home, and we would have taxes paid through November of 2019. So we may be, with your recommendation, I would be willing to listen. Thank you.
The one thing that I do want to point out is this is a very sensitive situation in my office every single year. I have people crying at my desk, as well as I did last year during this process, that did come up in the day before the sale and did redeem their properties. I want to make sure we're setting the right precedents. I do not like taking homes or properties from their owners. That is not one of my favorite things of my job. I do have one of the best jobs because I do get to deal with all the public and help them through these types of situations. However, there's a lot of folks that play the game, and we've got to be very careful how we go about this situation so that we set a precedence. We may have a lot of folks coming back.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Ms. Baker-Patrick, you mentioned that you sent certified letters and they were signed for. In those certified letters, what do they say? Can you just give me a rough, what information is passed on to the property owner?
So this notice that's sent certified return receipt is a notice that a tax deed may be issued to the county. It's addressed to the property owner along with whoever else needs to be notified. It has the assessor code. It has the legal description on here. The property, a property tax lien exists on the following described real property as a result of a property tax delinquency. The description of the property on which the taxes are delinquent is located at located in Butte-Silver County, Montana, and is described as follows with the legal description. Gives them a date of when they became delinquent, which was December 1st of 2015. The property tax lien was attached by the Treasurer's Office on July 18th of 2016 and gives the date of when they need to pay the next payment date and to contact our office. One thing that Mr. Townsend mentioned, is that he doesn't have 3 years of delinquencies, and that is not what we're taking tax deed on, is the 3 years. It's the tax lien itself. The tax lien is basically 3 years old and expiring and coming to its redemption period, and that's when we're taking tax deed. It's not necessarily 3 years of delinquent taxes. So like he said, he did have other taxes paid, but it was that 2015 tax lien that was delinquent.
And that's what kind of confused me was I had a redemption letter that I had gotten for when I paid the 2016 and 17. I received a letter saying that I had redeemed my tax lien from 2000. I believe it was 2016 or 17, and 2015 was still out there, and I didn't get a notice on that at the time.
That's because it wasn't paid.
That's what confused me. So,
Commissioner Anderson.
I'm still having trouble figuring out why you'd pay I understand that you have to pay the current taxes, which he did with 17. Why wasn't this 15 tax deed paid then taxes instead of the 16?
I'd have to go back and take a look of how he paid his taxes and the dates that he actually came in and paid. The one receipt that I did pull, I just pulled the last receipt that he was in here on. Like I said, this Senate bill came in 2017, so that was passed for our, we started dealing with these on the 2016 tax liens. Basically, we were doing the old law, but the only thing that did change that we had to do immediately was how the law stated that they have to pay their taxes at the time. So when it did pass, they had to start paying whatever was currently due at the time.
Okay.
Whatever that was currently due before they could pay a delinquent year. Because normally they just came in and paid the delinquent year to get off the tax deed list.
Exactly. And when the new law came out in 17, did it say where the additional money would go? So you paid 17 taxes and you have 12, 13, 14 still, or 14, 15, 16. Does it say where that, and you're paying 3 years, does it specify? It specifies that your 17 has to go to 17 for that current year. But does it have anything to do with specify where the additional 2 years of taxes or 1 year of taxes would be paid, either 14, 15, or 16? Does it cover any of that?
No, it's up to the property owner, whatever they want to pay. I mean, it's only obvious that you want to make sure you get your oldest year paid. But whatever's current that's owing, you have to pay that, whether it's just the half year or the full year. And then, so I believe it would have been probably 2013 taxes that he was delinquent on when we were getting this Senate bill passed, and when the bill was passed in 2017.
And that's kind of my point here, because why would you pay, you'd have to pay the 17 to pay back any other money. But why would you pay 16 before 15 when 15 is going to put you in a lot more jeopardy than 16 would?
Well, 16 was probably the current year at the time he was paying the most delinquent year.
Well, if that was the case, then he wouldn't have been required to pay the 17 at the time, because the 17 would be the current year that he had to pay the back year of 15 or 16.
So I think we need to go in my office and look at the dates, but just for an example for this year, so you can kind of wrap your mind around the dates because it's so confusing. So the tax liens that we're doing tax deed on this year is 2016 tax lien. The 2019 taxes went out in November. So the first half of 2019 taxes are due right now.
Yes.
So in order for somebody to come in and pay their 2016 tax lien, they have to pay that first half of 2019. So there's 16, 17, 18, and now we're into 19 taxes. So 13, if he paid his 2016, 13, 14, 15, he would have paid 16s because he would have had to pay his 2013 to stay off the tax deed list. I just don't have proof of that right now, is what I'm trying to say.
One more follow-up.
Follow-up, Commissioner Randall.
So what I'm not understanding...
I know. It's very hard to wrap your head around.
Mr. Townsend, maybe when you paid the taxes on this, you paid them in 17, correct?
I paid, in 2017, I paid, I think, a total of $3,200 to pay 3 years, my current year plus 2 years back, and I did the same thing in 2016, 17, and I was going to do it, there's 17 and 18, and I was going to do it this year too, but I fell a little farther back financially, so I couldn't make it up there in time, and I didn't realize that the sale was going on.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. So when the certified letters were sent and somebody signed them, they indicated what was due or what was going to happen. Like, right, correct? I mean, the certified letter sent, you sign for it. It gives you directions of what the process is going to happen. So after that certified letter came, there was no reaction at that point?
I didn't see them.
Okay, so follow up on that. And then there's already one sale that went through, correct? I just want to make sure I'm...
Yes, sir.
One sale,
one sale and that, okay. Thank you.
Good reason why you should pay your taxes. Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. And I guess this is probably just a question for the county attorney. In the event that this property do go to the tax sale, would he get any kind of preference on the purchasing the property first at the taxable value?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Sorge, no. It would just be an auction, and when that property came up for sale, he would be like any other person that attended the auction and could make a bid, and would have to see if anybody else also bid on that property, and it goes to the highest bidder with the minimum price established by the city county.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. One last question for County Attorney Joyce. You mentioned a subsequent thing you could do between the sale 1 and the sale 2 to dispose of this property, correct? Would one of those things that we could add with the resolution and with the public hearing and everything be to allow the owner of said property, of any of these properties, because I imagine if once you set the resolution, it has to kind of stay in precedence through until such time it was changed. But could we put in the resolution at that time and have the public hearing and everything to allow for sale of, not the sale, but the redemption of property through paying the taxes in full? And what that would do would be eliminate just 1 or 2 years in the rear to get caught up, so you weren't under this, but just to have it paid off in full. And if you did meet that paid off in full amount between sale 1 and sale 2, would that be something that would be in, would that be something legal under the law the way it's written?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, I'm not sure I totally understand your question, but I think what your options basically are is to deny his request and, just allow this property go to the second auction, or to have this property taken off the list of properties that are going to be offered for sale and at the second auction, and pass a resolution following a public hearing. And the resolution is going to have to kind of lay out all the things that are required in the statute about how you're going to dispose of property, including Mr. Townsend's. And you could then, through that process, sell the property to him at a price that you would have to make sure is at least the same amount that he would have to pay should the property go to the auction.
Commissioner Anderson.
So we could hold this property off the sale, pass a resolution that would allow a homeowner or property holder to, between the first sale and the second sale, if they completely caught up with all the taxes and all the fees associated with it, and purchase it at that point in between that first and second sale. Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I've got a recommendation. I'd be willing to make it in the form of a motion to refer this communication back to the treasurer and the county attorney and hold in committee of whole and let them come back and give us a recommendation, if that is possible. I would make that in the form of a motion.
Okay. Motion dies for the lack of a second. Would you like to say something?
My name is Bridget Dahlman. I'm the one who actually signed for the certified letter. Sure. Mike actually, he didn't become property owner until 2018. His brother passed away in 2000, 16. Left the family in kind of a little bit of a hardship. His parents owned the property at that time. His dad fell ill, and he died in August of 2016. Mike's mom signed it over to him in 2018. He's only been the property owner for a year. Well, a little over a year now. Year and a half, I guess. So when he became actual owner, that's when he started to pay the taxes that were actually due, that his parents owed. So he's just trying to come up from what his parents owed to now, and we have the money. They just wouldn't accept it. It's been kind of a hard financial for his whole family to, overcome from his brother passing away, and then his dad passed away 6 months later, and his brother's wife and daughter had to be relocated, and we had to help them out. They were left homeless when the brother passed away, and then when Dad passed away, his mom and his sister were left without that help. So it's been a financial hardship for the whole family, and they're just trying to. Mike's lived in that house his whole life. His parents bought it when he was 6 months old. Our son, he's 5 years old now, and he's lived there his whole life. So, it's a family home. We don't want to lose it. We just have come into a little bit of a hard time, but we have the money now, and we've had it. It's just, it was tough coming up with it because of everything that happened. And we didn't really know how you were supposed to pay it, But we're well aware of it now.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, and thank you both for coming. And can I ask who you are? You didn't.
I'm his fiance.
What's your name?
Bridget Dahlman.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, first of all, this is a slippery slope, and I'm sure you can understand that. Here we are asking to basically, like Solomon splitting the baby, and we're not judges or anything like that, but we do have an opportunity to listen and to see what can be done. The problem is we have a treasurer who has followed the law. Right. You have gotten notices. You did receive them. You signed for them. And if this was so important, and we did get your letter, by the way, with all your hardships and that, but if it was so important, I can't believe you wouldn't have just jumped on that and done something. And that's what kind of bothers me. And I am worried about, I'm worried about creating a precedent. I think about the Dumas and the gentleman that could not get money to pay his taxes, and he lost the building. And, it's a very serious matter. It can never be...
He committed suicide
It can't be overemphasized how important it is that these things are done, because this is the law. We're following state law. Right. And so, without looking like a terrible person, which I am not, and I really do feel for you, and I did read your letters, and I've given this a lot of thought, but you do have an option. It's not there's a plan B, and that is to wait until the next auction. It is in less than 3.5 weeks. If we go through a public hearings and all these other things, it's going to take it probably beyond that time. So I would make a motion that we deny your request to repurchase it now, and that you have the opportunity to go to the second sale, which is on the 5th of February. You do have a plan B. It's an option. I don't know if anybody would offer anything for your place, but that's what my motion would be this evening.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to deny the request in communication 2020-04 and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I, too, think it's a slippery slope, and I feel terrible. This is not an easy thing for any of us. Nobody wants to see anybody's house go away. No, that's not the reason we're here. So don't think that we're trying to be... But it is a slope that, we also have to think of. I don't know how many other people out there that are doing, have the same issues. So it's a tough thing for us to handle. So that's the reason I'm going to support Cindy's or Commissioner Shaw's motion. It's just the right thing to do, unfortunately.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. At this time, I would like to make a substitute motion. It's going to be rather long and a couple different parts, but I clarified it with County Attorney, and I believe it's all legal, how I have it scribbled out here. So if it's not, I'll ask her to please correct me. But what the motion would be Part A, take this property off of the list of items to be sold at the next sale. B, draft a resolution allowing a sale of delinquent properties to be redeemed between the first and second sale if all property taxes to that date are paid and all fees associated with those are paid. And 3, schedule public hearing and other items that need to be done to put this process in motion.
May he second that, County Attorney? My question on the motion, so we do have a motion made and seconded, but you said make a list of all properties that were delinquent?
No.
Between the, I thought I heard you say that.
If somebody wanted to, what this would do, what I believe this motion would do, would allow an avenue for people to be able to redeem their property between the first and the second sale if it was done. I think this is something that the legislature should take up, but being as the legislature won't be in session to be able to take up these issues, in the meantime, I think it's a glaring delinquency in their law, and I think it's something that we can do today to kind of help people out in the meantime. And in the discussion that, from what I've heard from County Attorney tonight, I feel that everything that I stated and the order in which it would be done is completely illegal under the law and the other laws that this were placed and are still in place with the old laws. Okay. And that's why I asked her to please correct me if I was wrong in any of my assumptions through the questions I've asked.
So does Maker of the second withdrew, so we do not. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I just want to make sure on the question or on your motion that this would create this going forward. This isn't. I guess I'd more be in favor if this was a one case scenario. I don't want to change the whole rule of the, of the whole tax of. I mean, if your property goes to that first sale, again, my heart aches for you guys as well, but we do have laws certified. When you get a certified letter, you definitely react on however you react, no matter what's going on in your life. Life is, what it is, and it's tough, but I don't want to change the whole system on, now, hey, it goes to the first sale, it didn't, now the property owner can, maybe these one-time scenarios we can do that, but I don't want to change the whole ruling of that. By no means. I don't think we want to go there. That there's a reason they have these in place. Again, the rules of the law can't be. I'm not saying it's perfect. However, it is the law, and it's the rules we have to abide by. We change this, we open the floodgates on a lot of stuff. So I just want to make that clear. That's a tough deal.
Okay, we did not have a second on that motion, so that motion dies. So did Commissioner Schreier, did you have something?
Well, I would like to second that. I don't know if that's procedurally acceptable. I wasn't aware that Commissioner Fisher had withdrawn it. I didn't hear him say that. I heard you guys talking about it.
Okay. So you're going to second Bill's motion, the substitute motion?
Yes. And if I could say that I really like to take a look at most things with an eye of compassion, and I get the law, and I get all of that. And if we have something in our toolbox that we can help another person, I think we should at least try to employ it. Lori, can you tell me how common is it for a property to go to for sale and not sell?
That's really hard to say.
I mean, if let's say there were 10 properties, and I know it varies because
It
they
does.
could be in desirable neighborhoods, they could be in less desirable neighborhoods. Let's say if you had
Maybe
comparable-
30 to 40% sell.
Oh, okay. So in properties comparable, I'm sorry, Mr. Chief Executive, if I may.
No, go ahead.
Properties comparable to Mr. Townsend, is it likely that that would not sell at a first sale? In some cases.
Yes.
And so by creating an avenue for a property owner who clearly did not understand the statutes, and that's on you, it paves a way for them to redeem their home, save us some time and effort in a second sale, and I believe is in the public's interest that we keep a family in their home. My own opinion. You don't have to answer. But I do agree that it's really important to pay your taxes because we're all here to help each other have the things that we need. We're here to, levy taxes to provide services, and we can't do that if people aren't paying their taxes.
Right.
So I do have a little problem with that not being paid, but I do understand your circumstances. That's all I have.
Pull a loan, and it's pretty hard to get a loan without credit, so.
Commissioner O'Neill.
So thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I do want to say that, like in this case scenario, it did go through the first sale. It did fail. I'd say if we're going to do anything, we'd make this if we were willing to help them out, if you will, in this situation because they do have the monies. But I totally disagree with changing the whole procedure of that. But this one-time chance, I'm fine with that. I mean, because I don't want to take anybody out of the house. I agree, and obviously it didn't sell in the first one. I mean, the chances of it coming up and saying, what's the number that they're behind on your taxes right now? Like, what's the number? It's $4,700 was on the what the letter was.
The county bought it for us.
4,700.
So when the taxes are delinquent, when they went delinquent as of the 1st of October, because our sale was on the 2nd of October, the taxes that were due, plus the fees that Butte-Silver had accrued during this process, were $2,281.02, and that's what they could have redeemed it at on October 1st. When we do our sale, the formula that has been used is we take the market value, we subtract the taxes from the market value. There is a $25 fee for our office to do this extra step that's added in there. We times the fee that we've subtracted the taxes from the market value by 10%, and then we add the taxes back in, and that's the sale price.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Just a couple of comments. Keep in mind, in the Committee of the Whole next week, we have a similar situation on the exact same thing. So where is it going to stop? I don't know. I'm sorry you guys went through this. I mean, this is the last thing I'd want to be talking about right now, but there is a process. There was notification. And if we go through this, it basically allows people to ignore the first step of a tax sale because they know that they have this other option to fall back on between 1 and 2. And so we have to see if that is okay with us as we move forward. I mean, the last thing I want to do is sit up here and have somebody have to move out of their house. I mean, that's the worst thing I've ever had to even think of. But those are the facts. I mean, notification was sent out. Notification was received. I wish you could have got to them a little quicker and tried to figure that
We
out.
were just
but
trying to come up with the money.
I know. And the only thing that I'm afraid of is if we start this, it's just going to allow more people to keep going forward on that, between that first sale and second sale. If it doesn't sell in the second sale, it's already Butte-Silver Bow property, so really it's owned by Butte-Silver Bow.
Correct.
Today. Correct. And so I don't know if you guys are living in that house right now or not, or if that's acceptable
Well, see, that's what I was told, was to come here and talk to you guys, because you guys were the only ones that could either say yes or no.
Okay. So then the second sale goes through, and if it sells to whoever, it goes to them. If it doesn't go through, then it just gets deeded back to Butte-Silver Bow, and then from there we have to decide what's our best course of action moving forward.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I get what Commissioner Morgan is saying, but I do think that the property owners still have skin in the game. I think the legislative change that was made allowed people to play a game, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
I know people personally who have said, I only pay my taxes. I let them go 3 years, and then I only pay 1 year. So I think that was a good change. But I don't think that us okaying something like this is going to cause people to play a similar game, because there's no guarantee their property's not going to sell at the first sale. They are at risk of losing that property. That's a pretty big gamble if they say, I'm not going to pay my taxes, and I'm going to hope that nobody buys my property, and then I'm going to redeem it anyway. I think if they had the money at the time and they had the wherewithal and the resources, they would redeem it if they could. I think, anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
I would also add that it was stated earlier that this isn't something that comes up here very often. Yes, there is something, like you said, next week coming up on it, but
that guy didn't pay any of his taxes.
But what the thing is that I think the reason why so many of these are coming up now is because I personally know some people also, just like Commissioner Shea said, where for the longest time they had an out where they didn't have to pay. If they got a year or two behind, it wasn't a big deal because they could always pay the 1 year and keep up to date. You can't do that anymore, which is a great thing, but there's still some inefficiencies, I believe, in this law. That's why I wanted to clarify things that will put a mechanism in place for people to do that. I don't believe that this is something that would be used very often. I think that there is enough where you have to pay everything off. It's going to make the difference of 3 or 4 months. If they're not going to do it in month A, they're not going to change their mind all of a sudden 5 months, 6 months later, I don't think this is going to set up any kind of bad precedence. What I think it does do is, in a situation of dire distress where you don't really understand what's going on, you inherit a property that's been in the family for a long time, and you come across a bad situation with an untimely death and circumstances beyond your control. It may take you an extra 5 or 6 months to put everything together and all the pieces together. And what this does, I believe, is give people an opportunity when those hardships do arise. But I do not believe it's something that's going to open the floodgates to disaster. If anything, what it would do is probably spur the state legislature to move more efficiently in cleaning up some of the language that they, I believe, left rather vague.
Okay. On the question, I guess the motion was, would you restate how you said that? Because I still think you made a motion to list all of the delinquent properties from the
No,
last
what I
tax
want to
sale.
do is to take this specific property
just this
off of the tax deed. And if next week they want to come over, and we can make a decision at that time. But each one of these would be individually made. So just this one house taken off the thing. The second part of what county attorney said would have to be done, so I'd ask for that to be done, is to draft a resolution stating how they can redeem their ownership of the said property between the first tax sale and the second tax sale. And to draft that language in a resolution, and then we can take a look at that resolution and vote on it at that time. The third part of this that had to be done to pass and get the resolution point would be to schedule a public hearing. So as part of this resolution, I'd ask for that public hearing to be scheduled. So A, take off the tax sale, B, draft a resolution, and C, schedule the public hearing.
County Attorney Joyce.
Just to clarify, the public hearing has to be held prior to adopting a resolution, so you'd have to schedule a public hearing, and potentially you might want to have a resolution of intent introduced so that people knew what the public hearing was about.
Exactly.
And as I indicated earlier, the resolution has to contain certain provisions, so it can't just apply to this one property. It kind of has to say a process that this council is going to determine is appropriate between a first and second sale, but it does have a catch-all that says any other provision that the board considers to be necessary in a matter that's in the best interest of the county and its citizens. And I believe that's where you could talk about what you're proposing, that there is a process in between the first and second sale for people that have the money to pay all of the back taxes and the penalties and interest to be able to get their property back prior to the second sale.
Yes.
That would have to be part of a overall resolution that this is what this body's going to adopt as a process in between a first and second.
And I think that language in there would alleviate the fears that this is going to be running rampant and people are going to take advantage of it, because we'd have to make sure that it was in the best interest. And so I think we can agree that it would be in the best interest of the community if this family was allowed to do this. However, in some situations, it may not be in the best interest.
Okay, everyone understand the motion to remove this from the tax sale list, draft or schedule the public hearings, and then draft a resolution after the public hearings. Okay, will everyone please vote? What's that?
I have a question.
Okay. What's your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I do apologize, but I feel like these are two different situations we're dealing with right now. Either like these people are coming here for one thing, and then we're opening up something else for the whole tax. Am I right? For the whole tax situation. I think that's. That's the only way we can do that. We can't just say, hey, yeah, come by. We can do that on this one particular thing. We have to open it up for the whole deal. I'm sorry. I'm confused on that. I just can't we make them. Sorry, can't we make the motion that they can just buy the property for whatever we want, take it off there, go that, and then make it. Then next time make the other argument on the tax. No, we can't do that.
County Attorney Joyce.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill, no. Because there is a specific statute that indicates what a resolution has to include. And it sets out I read some of that earlier, but you have to include how you're going to, how you're going to, the approved location for sales, including whether the sales will be conducted through the internet or other, so your basic or an online location requirement that all locations be accessible to the public, the types of sales for which you're going to have a public auction. So you're basically coming up with a process in between the first and second sale as to how you may decide to go ahead and dispose of property prior to the second sale. But like I said, there is that catch-all that you can say any other provision that you think is in the best interest of the county and its citizens. And so you could have part of your resolution be what Mr. Anderson and Commissioner Shea are kind of indicating, that you can have an opportunity for, people to come forward, and if they have all the money up front, that's a process that you're going to approve, that you would, and you could do that on a case-by-case basis. But you're going to adopt a resolution that sets forth an entire process in between your first and second sale. And then one of the provisions could be that you do have an ability to allow this to happen, but you could still consider it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Did you want to vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? The clerk, please record the vote.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 4 yeas and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nays.
Okay, motion dies. So we go back to the original motion, which was to deny the request and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? The clerk, please record the vote.
1, 2, 3. We have 8 yay, and 3 nay.
Motion carries. So now we'll go to communication 2020-19.
What does that mean? I don't
That
know.
your house will be offered at the next tax sale, and you'll have to redeem it at that sale.
Okay.
You have to bid on it. Okay?
Okay.
This is communication 2020-19. It's from Maria Porchavina, Executive Director of the Butte-Silver Tourism Business Improvement District, TBID, requesting council authorize street closures on January 11th, 2020 on Park Street near the Montana Tech Arch between approximately 7:30 a.m. and 8 o'clock a.m. and on Main Street between Broadway and Granite Streets from approximately 4:45 to 5:45 p.m. This is the purpose of the street closure is to allow David Yarrow, a world-renowned photographer, to take photographs in these areas for a project with the TBID. Maria, are you awake still?
I came early and, yeah.
Stayed late. That's what we like.
I am Maria Porchavina, and for the sake of tonight's meeting, I'm here from the Butte-Silver Convention and Visitors Bureau. I reside at 2511 Parrott Street with my handsome husband, Michael Porchavina. So I apologize. First of all, thank you, Chief Executive Palmer, Johnny Morgan, Council Commissioners, for allowing us to bring this to you late. I didn't know it was going to come this quickly. I know I've come before here and asked for special requests, and here I am again. But, these kind of things come last minute. I think that you were talking earlier about the project where they wanted to do some paranormal shooting up at the Anselmo and the Stewart, and there's not a lot of time. These things come together rather quickly. So with me today is Jim Ward, and I will have him explain what he does. I've just gotten to know Jim here recently as Governor Bullock signed into law the film tax credit. So Montana is back in the film business, and that's exciting for us, not only here in Montana, but in particular Butte. And so I'll have a conversation with some of you later about paranormal and how I feel about that. But this came very quickly. So this is not David Yarrow, but we have a book, a heavy book, a beautiful book, and the forward inside is written by Tom Brady. I wasn't sure if it was the Tom Brady, but it's the Tom Brady. I got to meet David on Sunday night. We all went to dinner. He's different than the rest of us. It's what you would think most artists or people that are kind of eclectic and unique. Jim has been trying to get him here for a long, long time. I've heard of him before. He recently, was it last April when he did that film shoot with Greg's car? When did he do that? In January. Greg Harland, who's from Anaconda like I am, works at Montana Broom and Brush. He had a car that Jim was able to get. David wanted to photograph it in Virginia City. We can show you the photo. There's a wild animal in the front. But I think more impressive is Cindy Crawford's in the front seat as well. So he brings together unique areas and then beautiful women, and here we are. Jim has tried very hard to get him here, and we finally got him here, and he was just as impressed as we knew he would be. So I'm going to have Jim introduce himself. Don't forget, we're beyond the 3 minutes. We've been here for days. Anyway, you have to give your address, too. We're just going to keep him here until they say yes.
Gotcha. Very good idea. Commissioners, Chief Executive Palmer, thank you guys for having me. I'm Jim Ward. I live at 2022 Wall Street down by Clark Park. I've been working in the film business for almost 30 years now. So just real quick, I'm very experienced with locations, their contracts, all of that. So we can talk about that at another time. But it's really important that we work with David Yarrow, because right at this moment, the state legislature, this past year, the state legislature passed a bill to spend $20 million a year, well, not spend it, but tax incentives to get film businesses to come here, production companies, for movies, television, ads, many, many things. Butte is in a unique situation because Bozeman's actually the film hub, Missoula's kind of second, and we're getting nothing, we're dry. But this town has an insane opportunity with all of these old buildings that are not used, mine sites, warehouses, that are great natural movie sets that they don't have to build this infrastructure. We also have housing, one of the biggest things that movies look at when they bring their crews here. And what's important about that is we're actively trying to build Butte as a film hub right now. And I'm working with the city and other entities around Butte to build a location hub so we can photograph all of these locations, get them on site, and try to get these companies to come here. We could literally, this is not an exaggeration, we could literally spend $1 million and not get the exposure that David Yarrow will give us, because he has millions and millions of followers. He is the largest selling photographer on the planet. The number 2 guy sells 4 or 5 times less. And what's special about that is advertising, we all see it, we watch it, look at it. We don't actually register it. When people see David's work, they go, what is this? It catches their attention, they stop, they study it. And David isn't just a photographer, he's a storyteller. He tells what every single one of those photos is about, where it came from, where it was photographed. We create a photograph, and there's a bunch of them in that book, 6 or 7 of them. Every year we go to the Pioneer Bar in Virginia City and recreate a photo in there. The mayor of Virginia City gave David the key to the city this last year because, and I don't remember the number, but he claims that visitors to Virginia City has drastically increased in the 6 years that David's been there. And the bar owner, the Pioneer bar owner, told me himself that at least 50% of the tourists that come in his bar claim that they saw David Yarrow's work and wanted to see where he did it. So I'm not saying people are going to come to flocking to Montana because of David, but if they're already here, or if they're at Yellowstone and going to Glacier, they're going to make a point to stop here, exactly like they already are doing in Virginia City. So it can drastically improve our tourism. But above and beyond that, David is the most iconic photographer in the world. Movie directors, their DPs, and photographers mimic his work. So if we can get him and his work out there, and these guys going, wow, where did they do that? Then it can literally help it create an industry within this city just because of this one man. And more than that, David's a very, very special guy. This is not for profit. David is a man who has his own means. So everything he does, all the profits go to charity. And he has already offered that Butte can use his work for free for advertising. And all of his money, since it goes to charities, he'll pick charities within this community and contribute to those charities as he's here. But David, if we can get him to fall in love with Butte, he'll come back every year, and often 2 or 3 times a year, just like he already does in Virginia City. So I think it's really important to address this. And I know there's something that what's on the agenda tonight is streets. But what David actually does is he photographs animals, and he puts them in unique locations. And we need approval for the animals as well. So I guess I'll open that up to questions for you guys. Are there any?
Can I just make a comment? I went ahead and I Googled him just to see how much his photographs were. There was one that sold for $78,000. There was one that sold for $90,000. I was talking to Jim. Sold one for $450,000.
250,000 pounds, and which is $400,000, depending on exchange rate.
So, and you know, I think this came up very shortly. You know, you made a comment earlier, John did, about you know, going through the proper procedures, letting you know. Oh, Eileen's saying something. We can't do something. She's shaking her head. But this is really a great opportunity. As you are going through that book, too, you will see a picture of our very own John Kovacic. Kind of interesting.
And I want to thank a whole bunch of people helped me get this put together the last few days. Bob Lazarus and Maria, and endless amount of people. It's there has been a lot of help to get in front of you guys tonight, so I appreciate it very, very immensely.
There's an agreement that wasn't on the agenda. So I guess I have to bring up the part about the animals and the agreement that between the Fish and Game that wasn't on the agenda tonight.
Correct.
So that we can't approve that. But the street closures are the only things that are on the agenda tonight. Was he going to use the animals in the streets, or?
Yes, everything he does, he uses an animal in. So animals are more important than the streets are.
Or even Cindy Crawford.
Right.
Cindy. Commissioner Shaw.
It's getting late. Now we're on first name basis. So why wasn't that in the original? Oh, this is just.
Well,
I mean, that's a really big.
Normally.
Omission.
I haven't been through this process with Butte, but I've done this in many states, and it's always the person that approves the location signs the release for the animals at the same time. It all goes into the package together. So, I mean, it was in the package, but the package wasn't literally, permits wasn't put in until this morning, which apparently the letter, I'm unsure of all the terminology, but the request to be here at front of you guys had already been
yesterday. It had to be done before today. Yes.
Right. So the suspension was written before you guys actually got to see the permit. So anyway, the suspension, I think, was done on a verbal basis and as a favor, and a great favor, and I can't express how much I appreciate that.
I guess we could probably approve the use of the animals, but we cannot sign the release that the Fish and Game Department had included in that packet. Commissioner
Oh,
Moore.
one
Thank you,
thing
Mr.
that's,
Chief Executive. Just with that being said, what kind of liability are we as the commissioners accepting if we're not signing agreements and such? I'm a little, you guys all know me, I like to go by procedure. Working with Maria, you know, going through this, I don't know how we proceed further if this is not an agenda item that we can pass, but.
Commissioner Morgan, this does not release us from liability in any way, shape, or form. This is a really strange thing from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. It says that you will release Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks from harm. So if one of our animals causes any damage, you wouldn't sue Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And what is weird about that is they're not involved in this entity in any way. But you are releasing, or the city of Butte is releasing them from being sued. But we have our own insurance, and it's attached and included in the permit. So if something did go wrong, we have insurance, and we're the ones that would get sued. So I'm sorry, but I can't explain why we're required to do this by Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
County Attorney Joyce is.
Mr. Moodry.
For the record, I'm John Moodry, Assistant Director of Community Enrichment and Animal Control and Animal Services. We have reviewed the packet, and we agree with Mr. Ward that that release is to release Fish, Wildlife, and Parks because they, as a state entity, manage wildlife in the state of Montana. So that signature would release them of any liability. We have reviewed it with animal control officers. We have made the decision that we will have animal control officers on site both times on the 11th, I think it is, and that we would assure that no domestic animals will get in with the wildlife animals, but we would leave the control of the wild animals up to the handlers and the people that do that. But we did review that today, and we have looked at it, and I do agree with Mr. Ward that it is a release. That Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is not going to be held responsible for letting wildlife within the city limits of Butte. And you're reading it, so and I don't like the look on your face. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan.
But herein lies the problem: is we can't sign this form to release them tonight. That there is the problem.
It's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda tonight, so we can't approve this form.
Can we somehow get it signed by Friday?
No.
Commissioner Anderson?
Can we suspend the rules to add that to the agenda? Is there a way to do that, or?
Want to take a recess?
Who put in the agenda?
Want to take a recess and have them write a communication?
County Attorney Joyce?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, I mean, if you're to suspend the rules, you're adding a communication, and I don't know there isn't one that's been written to authorize the Chief Executive to sign this indemnity agreement attachment. And it does basically have Butte-Silver as the landowner authorizing the roadside menagerie to conduct exhibitions. And so Butte-Silver is the one that is indemnifying the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in the state of Montana and their employees. And even though if the council's comfortable with the fact that there's an insurance policy, that covers, there still isn't not an agreement between Butte-Silver and Mr.
David Yarrow?
Ward the photographer. I think on the policy that we are named as an additional insured.
Yes, yes, you are.
But there isn't an agreement to transfer this indemnity from Butte-Silver Bow over to them. It's just that they do have insurance to cover, but that doesn't mean the Butte-Silver Bow couldn't be sued. And I don't know if you want to, I don't know how you add this to the agenda unless you want to take a recess and have them write a communication. And somebody make a motion to add it to the agenda.
Okay. There's a motion made and seconded to take a 5-minute recess, which will probably turn into 10 or 15. Anything on the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Wait. The Finance and Budget Committee is going to reconvene for a few minutes here.
while we're on recess, I don't want to forget this. David is an extraordinarily open person, and he's really friendly and outgoing. And the set is always open. So feel free to come and visit and watch us film. And we will be Sunday and Monday in the Silver Dollar. So not there the whole time. We'll be in and out of there, but we'll be filming in the bar. There will be a band. That's part of the setup and everything, but also he opens the bar. So stop and let David buy you all a beer and watch us, what we do, and meet David. So thank you, guys. I can't express how much I appreciate what you're doing.
We already have a motion.
check in? Everyone check in, please.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Everybody please check in. No. Love it.
Okay.
We have 11 present and 0 absent.
Okay. Let's go back and we'll continue. We'll finish up 2020-19. We never did vote on that, so we'll do that first. So Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I'll make a motion that we concur with Communication 2020-19 and place this communication on file as all signatures have been received.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to concur in the request in Communication 2020-19 and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. I just want to let everybody here know that I'm against this. I've seen some and I'm worried about animal cruelty with these animals on the street, so I think we should definitely vote against this. Thank you.
Here, John.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
We have 11 yea and 0
Motion
nay.
carries. Next, we'll go to the suspension of the rules to add the new communication to the agenda. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. In accordance with the provisions of Section 6 of Rule 6 of the Rules of Business of the Council of Commissioners of the City and County of Butte-Silver Bow, State of Montana, the Council hereby finds that an emergency condition exists which requires that the Council rules be suspended to allow Communication 2020-20 to be added to the agenda on the January 8th, 2020 agenda.
Second.
I got it right. The reason for the suspension is Communication number 20-20 is a communication from Maria Porchavina, Executive Director of the Butte-Silver Bow Tourism Business District, TIBID, requesting Council of Commissioners authorize the Chief Executive to execute an indemnity agreement attachment, landowner authorization for exhibit on behalf of the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department, indemnifying them from the liability associated with allowing roadside menagerie to conduct exhibits on public properties on January 11th, 2020. The purpose for this release is to allow David Yarrow, a world-renowned photographer, to take photographs in these areas with roadside menagerie. This communication was not submitted prior to the deadline for submission of items on the January 8th, 2020 agenda, as Mitch Porchavino was not contacted about this project until after such deadline. At this time, I'll make a motion to approve the suspension of the rules to consider placing Council 2020-20 on the agenda at the January 8th regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to suspend the rules to add communication number 2020-20 on tonight's agenda. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Morgan.
Just on the question, it might be easier to ask Barb right now. 2020, is that communication already used?
Oh.
So I need to make an. You can just, okay, so we'll leave it the same. Thanks.
That'll work.
Okay.
Thank you, Barb.
The number has a ring to it anyway.
2020.
Okay. Everyone please vote. Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
11 yea, 0 nay.
Okay, motion passes. The rules are suspended, so we will do this communication now. Communication number 2020-20. Communication from Maria Porchavina, Executive Director of the Butte-Silver Tourism Business Improvement District, TBID, requesting council authorize the chief executive to execute an indemnity agreement attachment landowner authorization for exposition on behalf of the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department, identifying them from any liability associated with allowing roadside menagerie to conduct exhibitions on public properties on January 11th, 2020. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Unless there's questions, I'd make a motion that we approve Communication 2020-20 and place communication on file.
Second.
We have a motion made and second to concur in requesting 2020-20 and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Everyone please vote. Anyone wishing to change their vote? The clerk, please record.
11 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. I can't believe how many people got together to make this happen.
It was a first.
The whole town. Thank you.
Just tell them Virginia City has nothing on us.
That's true.
He discovered that. He came here Sunday just to stop and look. And within an hour, he said, all right, we're going to do one day in Butte. 2 hours later, he said, we're not going to Virginia City. We're shooting here for 3 days.
All righty.
So let's keep him here for 10 years.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Section 3, ordinances and resolutions referred to judiciary. Number 1, resolution number 2020-01. Resolution 2020-02. Resolution 2020-03, Resolution 2020-04, Council Bill number 2020-01, Ordinance 2020-01. Number 4, Section 4, Ordinances and Resolutions, second reading. Number 1, Council Bill number 19-15, Ordinance number 19-15. Will the clerk please read the title?
Council Bill number 19-15, Council Ordinance number 19-15, an ordinance amending Section 17060030 of Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, which section adopted the zoning map of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for a change to the official zoning district map by rezoning approximately 9 acres from M1 light industrial to C2 community commercial, commonly located on the northwest corner of Wynn Avenue and Motorview Road, located in Subdivision 14, Section 6, Township 2 North, Range 7 West of the PMM of the City and County of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for the repeal of all parts of ordinances in conflict herewith and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Bill 19-15, Council Ordinance 19-15 on second reading and pass, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to pass Council Bill number 19-15, Ordinance 19-15 on second reading. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Motion passes. Section 5, ordinances and resolutions for final passage. Number 1, Resolution 19-70. Will the clerk please read the title?
Council Resolution number 19-70, a resolution granting conditional approval of the final plat of the Skunk Dog Minor Subdivision of the City and County of Butte-Silver, State of Montana, providing for the repeal of all parts of resolutions in conflict herewith and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Resolution 19-70 on final reading and pass, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to pass Council Resolution 19-70 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Everyone please vote. wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
11 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Now's the time for any public comment on any public matter not on the agenda. Okay, seeing none, I'll call your attention to calendar of other meetings and events. Commissioner Morgan.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
It's been fun.
Gee.